This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
Rebel Force Radio presents
There is only one way. The way of the Mandalore.
The Mandalorian. After show. After show.
I have spoken.
You know, since seeing the first season of Andor, a lot of fans have been asking, well, how does a show like that stand up? How does it stand up to The Mandalorian? I know we all felt that there was definitely a different tone. There was a different cadence to the storytelling, certainly. But how would these other Disney Plus shows fare after we saw Andor? And that's on the good side and on the negative side, because I got called, you're not going to believe this, I got called a day or so ago, I got called an Andorian. And I thought that he meant, you know, those guys from Star Trek, you know, with the little suction cups on their heads. No, that's not what he meant. He meant I'm an Andorian because I'm a Star Wars fan that liked Andor. And that is I think I'm supposed to be offended by that. I don't know. I didn't ask. Am I supposed to be offended by that? But that's what I got called, an Andorian. And a lot of people are calling this an episode of The Mandalorian because it was a Disney Plus Star Wars streaming series sandwich where you had the top of the bun was an episode of The Mandalorian. The bottom of the bun was the conclusion of a very quick episode of The Mandalorian. And then in the middle, the meat in the middle was something else, but something more akin to Andor. Well, we'll talk about that and so much more here on Rebel Force Radio and The Mandalorian After Show. So glad to be back with you. Thanks for putting up with the change of schedule this week. You're not crazy, but if you are tuned in for the Bad Batch After Show, you might be a little disappointed. I hope not too much. We want you to stick around and talk Mando with us. We'll be back next week with a double feature review of this week's Bad Batch episode and next week's Bad Batch episode. But my body has been ravaged by the coronavirus this week. I had a good run, almost 3 years, but it finally caught up with me. And so we had to move the schedule around. And of course, by we, I mean myself and my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Jason, you look pretty good considering your time in the back to tank. You don't get all pruny like I get when I'm in the back to tank for too long. I get very pruny.
Well, you got to change out the Bacta. You can't just use old Bacta. It's like cooking grease. You have to change it out, otherwise it gets gross and smelly.
That stuff expired. It expired.
Yeah.
Expired. No, it's good seeing you, man. I'm glad you're able to be here because this is a really strong episode of The Mandalorian this week. Unfortunately, because of our change in schedule, the Bad Batch After Show is going to be pushed to next week. We'll present you a double long after show focusing in on the Pabu arc, I guess. It seems like it was setting up something. And we'll be discussing that next week here on Rebel Force Radio. But this week, it's all about the Mando. And man, have my hands been full with this episode ever since it dropped. There is so much going on here for, especially for hardcore Star Wars fans who have been following all the additional and supplemental material that's been released since the original trilogy. I'm talking about things like the expanded universe. I'm talking about things like the RPG. I'm talking about even the Clone Wars come into play a little bit in here. Old books. I mean, man, I was going through old books today like a crazy man, trying to find the origin of some of these great visual Easter eggs we were getting throughout the show, visual and actual verbal Easter eggs as well, because there are many things that get referenced throughout just some mundane dialogue in this episode that really got me very excited as somebody who appreciates any time the old, especially when the old expanded universe gets legitimized in new canon. And we got a lot of that going on in this episode. Things were happening that I was immediately recognizing on Coruscant, and taking me back to old books written by guys like Kevin J. Anderson. Oh man, so many of his brainchilds were very brainchilds. I guess it would be brain children. I don't use the
children
term
of the
often,
brain.
so.
Yeah,
Children
brain
of the
children.
brain.
Well, I'm glad that
Brainchilds.
you have. I'm really happy to hear that you have a lot of stuff to talk about in this episode. I think this episode for me set up a lot of really big themes. Certainly some of the moral dilemmas of cloning, organ cloning, individual cloning. I think there's a ton to talk about there. Beyond some of those larger issues, some may say, I'm kind of in that camp, that the episode was rather thin and a little dragged out. Now, the eye candy of Coruscant sure is great, but, and of course, if you've got all these expanded universe references and Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau kissing the ring of the EU a little bit, that's fine. We can certainly talk about that. I know we'll have lots of folks calling and offering that up in the chat. But as far as the plot, I thought that it was it was very thin as it pertains to Mando and Bo-Katan, to the point where it seemed almost unnecessary, really. I think they could have probably just dumped us on Coruscant with Pershing and had an episode without Mando and without Bo-Katan and spent a little bit more time with them and the other Mandalorians, because that's really what I was much more interested in, what was going to happen with Bo and the Armorer and Paz Vizsla and how she was going to be received. We got a little glimpse of that. And the whole plot with, I guess his name is Penn Pershing. Did you know that, Jim? That his name is Penn with
Pens.
2 N's.
No,
it's his
Pen
first
or
name.
Pens? Pens or
Penn.
A Penn Pershing?
Penn Pershing.
His parents really weren't consulting the baby name book very much. With they just named Penn.
No,
His
I
name's
think
Penn.
some of
It's
these
probably
modern Star
Dude.
Wars first names, like Sheev, Penn, I don't know where they're coming from.
Think about the one of the executive producers on this show, a guy who never ever turns down the opportunity to remind you he's from the state of Pennsylvania. Jeez, Filoni, give it a break.
Boy.
We all know you're from
right.
Pittsburgh. We all know.
We know
all
you're
know
a
how many
fan of
were-
the Pirates. And what's that other team
listen,
he likes?
No, not the Pirates. I've never heard him say a word about baseball. He likes the Steelers and, of course, the Penguins is his.
Oh, that I got
his
the
passion.
Pirates and the
He
Penguins mixed up.
bleeds
I know the Steelers, but I got the
He
Penguins and
bleeds
the
the
Pirates. mixed up.
Pens.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's all pen.
Yeah. So, in
so
case you
listen,
didn't know, Dave
if I
Filoni
was-
is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and very proud of it.
Exactamundo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, listen, I would not be able to resist the opportunity to throw in Star Wars references. I mean, Chicago references into Star Wars. Lord knows I throw a lot of Star Wars references into Chicago. But if I ran Star Wars in any way, shape, or form, yeah, sure. You might see Buckingham Fountain in the background at Coruscant or something like that. But I'm telling
Now,
you,
you guys that been listening to us for a long time, you know Mac very well. This is the biggest understatement that he's ever said, that he might sprinkle a little bit of Chicago into Star Wars if he ran Star Wars. Nobody bleeds Chicago that I know like this guy. He is proud of
true.
the city that he's from. Oh, no, I think it's very
That's
true.
not true.
I
I
think
would
it's
move
very
out
true.
of here in a second. I'm sick of the weather here. I hate the weather here.
You can take the boy out of Chicago, but
I hate the occasional Chicago apathy too. But one good thing is that Chicago does exist in the future, according to Star Trek, because Captain Shaw is a typical Chicago dip blank or whatever he referred himself to in that episode of Picard. But what am I doing talking about Star Trek during the
Dip
Star Wars
crap.
podcast? Impossible. I'm just saying
impossible.
there's been a lot of Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh references that Dave has thrown in over the years, and maybe you could give it a break. I don't know if Penn Pershing is necessarily a Pennsylvania reference, but I'd be willing to bet, $50 on it.
Yeah. Well, it was nice to see the character back. It's a very interesting character, and he's played very well by Omid Abtahi. And we got to see another familiar face who I had forgotten about until the recap. And that's Elia Kane, a.k.a. Amnesty Officer G68, played by Katie O'Brien. I went to school with a Katie O'Brien, different Katie O'Brien. But let's do the tale of the tape here. Let's talk about The Mandalorian. This is The Mandalorian After Show. We're talking about Season 3, Episode 3, Chapter 19, The Convert, directed by Lee Isaac Chung. He's an Academy Award nominee. I did a little background on Lee. There wasn't much that I recognized, but I did recognize his accolades, and he is an Academy Award nominee. Episode written by Jon Favreau along with Noah Clore. Those musical themes, very, very familiar and popular, by Ludwig Göransson, with a score that, boy, this week's really threw me. I was hearing some 80s synth going on, and a few times I thought I was listening to an episode of Stranger Things, to be honest with you. So Joseph Shire's score, I got to tell you, I'm not loving the music in this show this season like I did under previous seasons, under the baton of Ludwig Göransson. Just for me. Original air date for this episode, March 15th, 2023, and a runtime, by popular demand, I got you a runtime minus the end credits. We're looking at a meaty, beefy 53 minutes on this episode. With credits, it's almost a full hour, 59 minutes. So, Jim, I don't want to come across as though I didn't enjoy this episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I absolutely enjoyed it. But I did feel that for an episode that was this long, I should come away with more answers than questions, and I have a lot more questions than I do answers. And I understand, that's fine. But we only have 8 episodes per season. This isn't Bad Batch where we've got 16. We've got 8, and this is number 3. We got one more, and we're halfway through. And then we're probably not going to see this show for at least a year, maybe even longer. Probably more like a year and a half. Because they've got a lot to produce. We've got Acolyte, we've got Ahsoka, we've got, what's the show with the kids coming up with Jude Law?
Skeleton Crew.
I can never remember the name of that show. So I'm just getting anxious because we're 3 seasons in and we're still tiptoeing around stuff. And I want to get to some meat. And
okay, what do you want to see them get right to as a instead of tiptoeing around it, as you say? What are the things that you think need to be prioritized right now?
Well, I'd like to see another Imperial warlord show up. I would like to see
another one.
Well, because I want to see that there's more, that there's this potential network, that there are other Moff Gideons out there. I'm kind of tired of not having someone to fight, an enemy right now. It gets a little bland for me to be watching a Star Wars show and not have a big bad. We know there is a big bad. We got a little reference to the big bad and what may or may not have happened to him, with Moff Gideon maybe escaping, although maybe that's a cover story. We don't know. And I love getting some of the details about what's happening within the New Republic, how they're failing, how they're succeeding. I love all that stuff, but it's not setting up some big, it's Star Wars, man. I think you said that on the Bad Batch after show, either this or last week. You're like, it's Star Wars, man. Where's the war? And that's where I'm feeling a little bit with Mando right now. Where's the war? Where is the conflict?
You're right. Maybe because of the series you speak of, Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew, maybe too much of an effort is going into laying down some foundation in the mythology for those shows. As we saw with Boba Fett, it certainly picked up on the Mandalorian story, so much to the point where some people refer to a couple of episodes of Book of Boba Fett as Mandalorian season 2.5 or something.
Right.
So I just think the days of of, excuse me, the days of anxiety over, oh my God, the show's not going to come back in a couple more years. I don't see that as being part of the game that's being played anymore, because that's what this episode could be doing. It seems like they're setting up some really big themes here. Specifically, the sequel trilogy, specifically The Rise of Skywalker and The Return of Palpatine, which Lord knows needs all the help it can get. So,
yeah, that plot is on as much life support as Palpatine actually was in the movie. That particular plot point. No, I do agree with you. They're doing a lot of setup. I want more than setup. I feel like I've been set up for almost 3 seasons now, 2.5 seasons.
Well, I was wondering where the series is going to go last week, and some people are like, "Where's the series going to go? This series is hitting on all cylinders and stuff." And I only asked that last week is because there were a lot of things that were kind of concluded and wrapped up last week that were set up over a year ago. Will Din become? Will he get his reconciliation and become? Will he be embraced by the armor and the creed once again? And how is that going to happen and stuff? I mean, we saw that. And at the same time, while it was closing that door shut, it was opening up another door, and that's the return of the Mythosaur. And the Mythosaur is supposed to raise up and herald a new era for the Mandalorians, right? Excuse me. You know, I'm kind of like a prop comedian. It's like I bring it up, I have to start showing it off. You know, look at my Mythosaur skull.
Yeah,
look, I can see you. Remember that old show, that kids show,
Romper Room? Oh, are you looking like through the Mythosaur eye? And
I see Bo, and I see Din, and I see the armorer, and all right,
enough.
Well, it is the very last shot of this episode as Bo Katan is being welcomed into the covert. She looks up and sees that Mythosaur, and of course it reminds her of the real one she saw a day ago in the living waters. So she's having some PTSD.
Well, a huge moment for Bo, really. I mean, she emerges from the water and keeps her helmet on. Mandalorian says, "This is the way." She says, "This is the way." She's feeling the creed. She has creed vibes. Do you notice when she said, "This is the way," then Grogu kind of gurgled something back there? I think he's trying to say this is the way too, right?
So too. Yeah.
A lot of people want him to say that. I think we received a few emails from people saying, "They're setting it up. It's going to be his first words." Well, I think you're onto something for sure, guys. But she was showing
here. We thought at some
rebirth.
point his first words would have been the Force. May the Force be with you, but it's going to be "This is the way." Isn't that a twist?
I thought his first words were going to be, "Where's Kitster?" But what do I know? Star Wars already ripped that off of our RFR once. What's going to stop them from doing it again? Okay, back to the Mandalorian. I think it's really important to see how she's embraced the faith. And I think that's a big moment for Bo Katan. I really do. I don't think she's playing any games with anyone right now. She has nobody. She's been abandoned by her old crew. She was living in that old castle by herself with some droid. She was looking, just sitting there feeling sorry for herself. Now she has a purpose. Now she has a community that she can be a part of and contribute to. And it's, maybe it's a little more fundamental than she would prefer. And she might even look at these people as being zealots, but because she was the one refusing the notion that those waters were magic. Well, now that she's been in there, maybe there is a magic to them. Maybe there is something special about them. Right. The armor certainly seemed to think so when she dumped some in her cauldron. She could see that they were the living waters. And that's a big deal. And so I guess it brought Bo's faith back to life for whatever it was, or actually, made her into a different person. Because I have the feeling she never really was into the Mandalorian faith and all of that stuff. She says she took the creed or whatever. She,
well,
took
she
the
was
oath.
born. She was essentially royalty. So I kind of look
Right.
at her like a spoiled princess in a way, where it was all about ceremony, pomp, circumstance. It was what they did for the plebes. You know, that's what the family represented. It was, what's the word I'm looking for, where it's display, it's ceremony, it's, I can't think of the word, but you know what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So it wasn't, I don't think it was ever real to her. I think you're absolutely right. I think it was a role she sort of played. And let's face it, she's probably like most royal kids. You know, they are born of privilege and they're off doing their own thing. And I mean, she would later become quite idealistic because of the tragedy that would, you know, befall her family and the house and all of that. But I think you're right. I don't think she ever took maybe the spiritual side of the faith to heart. But somehow seeing, in particular, Din Djarin, who we have to assume she has respect for. He did obtain the Darksaber, and she's done nothing but really treat him with respect for the most part. There was that moment where I'm going to deal with him once and for all, and then it turned out to be Grogu, and she kind of blew him off the first time he came to her castle, but she's been by his side ever since it was established that there was need for her, and she didn't abandon him, and even after the baptism in the waters, she's going with him. But you are absolutely right. A lot of this is necessity because she doesn't have anyone else. But I was also glad to hear you say that you don't think that there's anything under the surface going on, that this isn't a double cross, that this isn't some sort of game that Bo is playing. Because I'll be honest, was going back and forth a little bit thinking that, oh, this is just working out a little too well for everybody. Are they going to be a nice, happy family, Mr. and Mrs. Mando with their little baby? And that's what it's sort of shaping up to. And I think, okay, what's underneath it? So what could the coming conflict be?
Well, you know, it just depends on how this all plays out, because, you know, Bo does have knowledge that there's that Mythosaur down there. And she knows of the legend of the Mythosaur rising again to herald a new age for the Mandalore. And maybe she is, because Bo doesn't have, her background isn't steeped in her faith. This we know, right? Her background is steeped in her power, her status, her leadership, things like that. And she lost that when she lost the Darksaber. It doesn't appear like she's really going to start fighting Din over the Darksaber, but she might. I still think that's definitely a possibility, but I think she sees this discovery of the Mythosaur is her way back in. She doesn't need the Darksaber if she comes riding into town on a Mythosaur. Then she'll have a lot of friends, and she'll be able to lead all of the people in the cave, and she gets everything she wants.
Then she'll have a lot of friends. I like that. That's what it takes to get friends, kids. It's not a pool in your backyard. It's not season tickets to whatever it is. It's a Mythosaur, and you ride it into town, and everybody wants to know you. No, I think you're right.
Right.
I'm a little embarrassed because I had written down the question to throw out to you and the audience about why hasn't Bo told Mando about the Mythosaur? Well,
yeah.
Your theory here is that that's potential power for her. That's knowledge and power. And that if all else fails, she knows it's down there and she's the one that could come riding the Mythosaur out of the water. That's a great theory. I like that. I can't think of a better one, to be honest with you.
And
other
also,
than it just didn't come up.
If she says anything about the Mythosaur, also it'll start driving people back to the planet probably more than she prefers. I still think there's something Bo has been hiding on the planet Mandalore. I don't know what it is, but she sure lived close to that place. And she insisted that it was inhabitable. You couldn't live down there. You couldn't go down there, that the air was poison and toxic. Mm-hmm. But she sure seemed like she knew her way in the underground in the last episode. She knew her way through the mines and was able to figure all that out.
She sure did.
Despite all the destruction. So I think she's been there before is what I'm saying. And I think she might be hiding something there.
Well, she did admit that she had been there before. It was part of a ceremony with her father. It was one time, and
no, I mean post-destruction.
Oh, I'm sorry, post-destruction. Oh, okay,
yeah.
Post-destruction,
and also the Empire's hanging out there too. We saw those TIE interceptors show up.
That? What is with that?
So they're keeping an eye on the system as well,
for sure.
So something's up on the planet Mandalore beyond the Mythosaur. The Mythosaur is a surprise. Bo was surprised. Clearly, she was shocked, and she's keeping that to herself. She's holding her cards close to her chest, and she's not going to reveal that little bit of information should somebody go and exploit it before she gets a chance to. It's as simple as that.
You were talking about the Empire's interest in Mandalore. Another topic we'll throw out. So we're going to be putting the phone number up on the screen here in a little bit. We're going to continue to set the table. We are monitoring the chat, so please keep those chats coming. Love listening or watching and reading your reaction to the discussion here. Again, that phone number will show up here shortly. But this shot that I've got right here, which is the readout inside the N1 Starfighter, whereas this is when Mando first realizes just how hot the heat is upon them. And immediately following that, you hear Bo-Katan say, wow, that's a lot of ships for an Imperial warlord. And that got me wondering, I don't think that's Moff Gideon that those ships are guarding. My thought went to Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Thrawn is back.
Yeah.
But see, I thought that they were setting up Thrawn's whereabouts as being a big mystery. But Ahsoka thought that the magistrate knew something about Thrawn,
right,
and his whereabouts. So his presence is known to Imperials throughout the galaxy. Just Ahsoka wants a piece of him because she believes he has Ezra. I guess. It seemed like Ezra had the upper hand when those Purgles pulled Thrawn's Star Destroyer into hyperspace in that last episode of Rebels. It seemed like Ezra was in control of the situation. So my question is, how did Thrawn get liberated from the Purgles? It should be Ezra who is the one who is reappearing back into normal space long before Thrawn. But there's a story to be told there, and we've yet to hear it. And
that all makes a lot of sense. That makes a ton of sense. Why would it be Thrawn? Or could it be? What if this? What if we know that power abhors a vacuum? So what if Thrawn's absence led to the rise of someone from within Thrawn's group? And that it could still be the remnant, the Imperial remnant, once under the command of Grand Admiral Thrawn, but it's someone else.
There were a few warlords that popped up in the old expanded universe. One guy named Zing, Admiral Dala, Isan Isard, and of course Moff Gideon is considered an Imperial warlord.
Right.
You know, there is no empire. So he's not part of any sort of legit society or, well, I shouldn't say that, legit government or legit country. So he's a warlord. Mm-hmm. But Thrawn, should he make his return, he would qualify as a warlord.
Yeah.
And this could all be setting the table for the rise or the return of the Empire or the birth of the First Order. Sure, they're leaning toward the birth of the First Order more so.
Well, to jump on your analogy, Jim, I feel like they keep pulling these really beautiful portions of delicious food out of the oven and setting it on the table, and they keep setting the table and keep setting the table. And I just want to sit down and eat some of this delicious food, but it's just a lot of setting the table. And I enjoy it. believe me, I enjoy the smells, and I enjoy the occasional nibble here or there, but I want to sit down and have a meal in this universe of The Mandalorian.
Patience.
And I don't know that we've had that meal.
Patience, Swag. You must learn patience.
It was never my
Listen,
strong.
A lot more happens. This is
master.
a television series. It's episodic and whatnot. I'm not trying to make any excuses for anything, but I believe a certain bit of world building and setup is necessary. And I used to watch that show ER on NBC. 24 episode seasons. Not a damn thing would happen throughout the entire season. At least stuff does happen in these episodes.
Well, it's a very
And
different thing now.
I think it's a huge character moment for this episode to end with Bo-Katan being the convert, I believe. I mean, I think you can also look at Pershing. They were trying to convert him. But I think Bo-Katan also, it's the convert. And she is now a more of a child of the Watch, I guess. And she's found a new home. And I think that's pretty important stuff.
Oh, I think it's great.
I think it's huge for the character.
And I think it shows a level of flexibility, though, within the armorer that maybe we wouldn't have suspected. I mean, sure, she technically bathed in the waters. It reminds me when I was a kid and your mom would make you take a bath and you would just kind of splash around and be like, did you take a bath? Yeah, no, you didn't. You just splashed around. You got to go in there. You got to use soap, whatever. So arguable that she bathed in the waters. I mean, Din made it part of, it was ceremonial. He was stating the words of the creed. Now, she rescued him, but she didn't really bathe in the water. She didn't say the words. There was nothing ceremonial about it. So it's kind of a technicality for Bo, I think, but we'll take it. And lucky for her, she did not take her helmet off after the waters.
Well, I don't think it's a technicality for Bo. I mean, she did as much, if not more, in those waters than the Mandalorian. And she clearly had an earth-shattering experience.
But they don't know that. Armorer doesn't know that.
But she answered the questions correctly.
That is true.
Remove her helmet?
Did you bathe? Did you take
so
a bath?
you were in the water, so she's redeemed, whether she likes it or not.
Yeah.
She's redeemed. And what kept that helmet on her head? She took that helmet off at any given opportunity to do so, especially with piloting a starship through space. Bo-Katan never wore a helmet. Only when she was in battle or on some adventure that necessitated the helmet.
That certainly implies a desire, right? To live under the creed.
That's her threshold moment for her, as far as her faith goes, is coming eye to eye with the Mythosaur. And I think that would scare the living God into any of us, quite honestly. So I see how that's a natural progression for that character. But back to the warlords, she does say that she's been messing around with warlords. And, in addition to her little activity on board Moff Gideon's Star Destroyer, there's other warlords out there she's been messing with, and she felt it was like vengeance for them to destroy her home.
She had some vernacular
some sort of vengeance.
She had some interesting vernacular this week. I know that was Scughole one of them. Were those the guys that shot down her home, blew up her home? Did she call them Scugholes? I feel like she did. Mud scuffers. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then what did she had a word too about what she did to some of those warlords. Which is basically
she scugged them off.
Scugged, that's it. Okay, so we got a lot of scugging going on. All right.
She scugged off those mud scuffers right in their scug hole. Yikes.
Well, it sure was cool to see things like this, to see the TIE fighter pilot at the helm of at the yoke, I should say, of the TIE Interceptor, one of the TIE Interceptors. And then we saw the TIE bombers. It was very cool. And I loved hearing the scream of those TIE Interceptors. I know it's not exactly like the TIE fighter, but it was close enough to where I was like, yeah.
It's close
That
enough.
sounds like Star Wars.
Same sort of cannon sound. And it got me wondering. I'm like, why didn't we see TIE interceptors in the sequel trilogy? We only saw traditional TIE fighters. I don't think we even saw a variant. We didn't see a First Order TIE bomber. We didn't see a TIE interceptor. And it just seemed like the progression broke off. But I guess everything gets reset when your Emperor gets thrown down a shaft and your space station blows up and a bunch of teddy bears defeat your empire. You got to go back to square one.
Yeah.
And that's the original TIE. But, you know, they didn't put TIE interceptors in the sequel trilogy. I just think that's weird. I'm not, you know, I'm just saying. Why didn't they?
They didn't really they didn't really expand the fleet much at all.
No.
Okay. We've spent some time, and there's lots more to say, I know, on Mando and Bo, and I want to know what's going on with Paz Vizsla, why he's got such a hang-up with Bo-Katan. I guess it could be Clan Vizsla versus Clan Kryze, some of that bad blood, because he's just very suspicious. The other thing I can't get over with Vizsla is how tiny his head is. He's got the tiniest little head compared to that helmet. Have you noticed this? It almost looks comical. It looks like a shrunken head. It's really bizarre. I tried to grab
his head is as small as his body is as large. Is what I'm saying. You know, it's one of those.
It's a little disproportionate. This picture doesn't really.
Paz Vizsla, he's lucky
but
he's even still around other Mandalorians because the other Vizsla, pre-Vizsla, he sold out the Mandalorians. He made a deal with the devil, with Darth Maul. I mean, he joined the Shadow Collective. I mean, he really, so any Vizslas should step aside for a Kryze. Because the Kryze people, they really did the Mandalorian people right, you know. I think Satine, she didn't want them involved in battle at all anymore. She's like, look what you guys did. You turned our planet into a desert, for crying out loud, and you're still fighting among yourselves. Then meanwhile, Bo-Katan, she united all the Mandalorian people when she got control of the Darksaber. Brief, however it may have been. Yeah. And I believe that's because she gained possession of the Darksaber through it's not the way. You're supposed to win the Darksaber in battle. And Sabine Wren just gave it to her. Just handed it to her. And Bo-Katan raised it up, and she's like, I'm in charge here. And everyone got on their knees and said, oh, yeah, it sounds like a good idea, but that's not the way. You have to win it in battle. So the Darksaber became cursed at that time. And that's how the Imperials were able to easily overthrow the Mandalorian system. Because if these guys are such tough warriors, they should have been able to stand up to the Empire, don't you think? Well, they couldn't because Bo-Katan was their leader, and she had achieved possession of the Darksaber.
She was illegitimate.
Means other than battle. It was
illegitimate leader.
Yes.
Here. This is our cover art for this week. That's how little. He's got a little teeny head. It's a little pea head. He's like that guy in Beetlejuice.
I think maybe it's just. It also kind of just the style of the helmet itself.
I don't know. He looks comical. He doesn't look threatening to me, except when he pulls out that big gun. That's very threatening. All right, I'll tell you. If you wanna know threatening, man, oh man, talk about that Elia Kane. What an evil person she is. My gosh, I've looked into the face of evil, and it is Elia Kane. At the end, I mean, how sick can you be? As she's scrambling Pershing's brains. And what does she do? She looks on with satisfaction, and then she pulls out a little snack. She's going to take a snack while she's watching this poor man's brains get turned into mashed potatoes. And look at those eyes. Ugh, what an evil person this was. And I have to admit, I was enjoying her. I kind of bought the routine for a little while. I forgot, that, she was likely who she was going to turn out to be. I was naive. I thought she was really getting to like Dr. Pershing. She established trust. I mean, this was great, but I think it's clear that she's a double agent. Do we all agree? She is a double agent. She is still working for the Imperial remnants, but yet she's acting as though she's an agent on behalf of the New Republic to catch those that still have conflicting loyalties. But the reality is she's doing that for her own for the purposes of herself as well as the remnants, perhaps Gideon himself still out there, because this was about silencing someone who knew too much, and Pershing knew too much, which is surprising because I thought that the value he provided was his cloning technology, his information, his expertise. But apparently he was too much of a loose end and a liability.
All right. Her character arc in this episode had my brain racing in a bunch of different directions. Okay. As we look upon the picture of her putting the biscuit in the basket.
In my basket, you mean her mouth.
Yes. So we're presented to her in season 2 of The Mandalorian. And an informant, like one of the first times we see her, there's an informant telling her about the whereabouts of the Razor Crest or something. Remember, she said,
yes.
She said to the guy,
because that enables them to put the tracker on it. It was that informant.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And she says, you'll have a good place in our new order or something. She says something to him. And then we see her again. She's a communications officer on Moff Gideon's ship. She's on his bridge crew. So she's a high up, she's like the Uhura of Moff Gideon's ship. And then we get presented. So we know she gets taken into custody by the New Republic because they took custody of his Star Destroyer at the end of season 2, once Luke Skywalker came and destroyed all the Dark Troopers. So she's now gone through the program, and she's part of this Amnesty program, and she's displaying this almost religious-like devotion to the New Republic now. And all of them are, do what's best for the New Republic, all that stuff. It's so I'm wondering, well, is this legit? What's going on with her? She starts presenting herself as someone who cares and wants to help Pershing.
Right.
Anyone who wants to help that much, you have to be suspicious of. Okay. And it all becomes, you think she's testing him. Maybe she's working on the behalf of the New Republic to flush out any Imperials that may still be harboring resentment for the Republic, or who might still want to carry on with the Imperial evilness in the galaxy now. So I'm thinking of stuff. And then she cranks up the dial on him as he's laying on that table, and she's left alone right after getting, pat on the back from that other guy. You certainly are a shining light to our program, or whatever he said to her. As soon as he walks out, she turns it up. And I got to thinking to myself, what's her problem with Pershing? What's the problem with him? Is this legit? Is she trying to put to side a threat to the New Republic?
No,
because of what he knows?
I don't think so. I don't think so. No.
And is she trying to just simply wipe him out because of what he knows, and how he's going to put that knowledge to good? Or is this vengeance? Is this payback? She's loyal to Moff Gideon. It was Pershing who opened up the whole door to the raid on the Star Destroyer, and Luke Skywalker eventually showing up, and everyone getting taken into captivity. At the beginning of the season finale for season 2, it starts off with Pershing on board an Imperial shuttle, and he's with 2 Imperial or I guess they're Imperial agents, right? And the slave one comes in and stops the ship, and Mando and Cara Dune bust into the cockpit, and the Imperial pilot holds a gun up to Pershing's head and uses him as, bargaining tool. And and Cara Dune shoots him in the head and kills him. That blaster bolt then cranks Pershing on the ear, which we see callbacks to that throughout this episode. A couple times he rubs his ear as
I thought he was saying hello to his daughter like Carol Burnett.
Carol Burnett show. I remember that. I was expecting a Tarzan yell to come out right after that, but it didn't happen. And so they took over that Imperial shuttle with Pershing on board, and the two pilots dead, and Pershing spilled his guts. He gave them all the secrets on how to get to Moff Gideon, on how to get on board the Star Destroyer, on where to find Moff, everything. He just made it very easy for that raid to go down. And that was all just to, get Baby Yoda back too. And also Pershing in the past showed sympathy toward Baby Yoda. He did not want Werner Herzog to kill Baby Yoda. He wanted, he wanted the baby for the blood, but he didn't want any damage to Baby Yoda. So Pershing's got a heart.
Yes.
And he also sold them out really badly to the Mando and his crew and stuff. So I think this is kind of a little bit of revenge, if you really want to know the honest truth.
I don't believe that it's motivated by revenge. I think it's motivated by the fact that he's doing what in a sense is Star Wars versions of TED Talks around the galaxy. He's getting the hoi polloi. I mean, how about that opera house, by the way? Nice cameo of the Coruscant Opera House.
That was cool.
But he's doing this. He's doing a tour, basically, about what he learned and what the Empire was doing even after the fall of the Empire at the Battle of Endor, what they were still doing. He said there was, I forget exactly what the speech was, but he said there was someone who wanted to harness this power for evil. And he doesn't mention who. I think we all know who. And then he ends up getting his brain scrambled.
Who?
It's Palpatine. Of course, it's Palpatine.
Or is it Moff Gideon?
Well, Moff Gideon is a proxy, essentially, for Palpatine. I don't think Moff Gideon cares about cloning. I think he cares about getting in good with his emperor. And I think one of the things we've speculated in the past is that all these warlords are likely out there trying to do something to get in favor and be next in line, be Palpatine's number two, bring him back to his former glory. I think they're all on that mission. It seems
like a lot of people would know then that Palpatine is planning a return, and that would have been a hard secret to keep. Like guys like Pershing. Now, what I wonder about Pershing is he part of, to bring Bad Batch into this mix. We got introduced to a new character this year, Dr. Hemlock, who is working at Mount Tantus, and he's conducting cloning experiments based on technology developed by the Kaminoans. So Dr. Hemlock and Pershing, Dr. Pershing, are they like kind of the same, cut from the same cloth? Were they working for Palpatine on these cloning experiments way back when, during the reign of the Empire? Or is this guy someone new who was brought in by guys like Werner Herzog and Moff Gideon and stuff, and he doesn't really understand what the end game is all about? He just is into the science. So I don't know if he knows about Palpatine, because I thought it was Palpatine he was referencing, but then I thought, well, maybe it's Moff Gideon.
It could be,
because he was working with Moff Gideon.
But I think his proximity to Grogu and the fact that he was working directly on Grogu gives him a leg up and probably gave him a little bit more access to what's really going on than anyone else. I would think that Grogu is likely the most coveted potential host DNA donor or whatever, blood donor they're looking for. And he lays it out, by the way, the tech, he lays it out in that TED Talk where he talks about what he's trying to do is actually splice. He wants to splice the sequences together to create not just a clone, but a replicant, I believe is what he calls it.
A replica.
Replicant
is Blade Runner. There was plenty of Blade Runner vibes in this episode, but he definitely said replica. Yeah, replica.
Right, a replica. Then I started thinking, wait, that's what Queel called Grogu. And then I go, no, he called him a strand cast.
No,
called him a strand cast.
Actually, there's a little confusion about that. It was Din who thought Grogu was a strand cast, but Queel actually refutes this. He says that Baby Yoda is too evolved and ugly, and he'd be able to know because he worked on some. Well,
right.
I was setting up a joke there, I guess. I didn't even realize it, but he was able to know because he worked in gene farms. So there was a lot of cloning activity going on.
Mm-hmm.
At some point during the Imperial reign. But I don't know if anyone actually realized it was all to give Palpatine some sort of immortality.
I think you're absolutely fair to question how far down the Palpatine link goes. And you're right, to Pershing, it may have been, Gideon might have been the top of that food chain as far as he knew and as far as he was concerned. Though I do think there are some out there that know that this is Palpatine's orders. And, you know, as far as keeping the secret, my God, he has an entire planet there full of acolytes that are worshiping him for decades while he's, you know, reconstituting himself and rebuilding himself. So, you know, so much for how to keep a secret in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, but it seems like an isolated secret society that has no contact with, because remember, it was so hard to travel to Exegol.
Right.
So I think once people were there, they were there. And that's when the secrets got revealed to them. And they couldn't then go out and share those secrets because they were isolated in that corner of the galaxy in Exegol, a place very hard to get to or get away from. So that's where I think the secret was okay to be spread around. I think there's an effort for Palpatine to perfect these cloning techniques. You know, Pershing brings up in season 2 that it's unlikely they'll find another donor with an M count in their blood like Baby Yoda had, like Grogu. And M count, we all think means midichlorian count, right? I mean,
right.
Without hitting us over the head with it. I mean, so there's obviously this effort to create a clone who's strong in the Force and created from the DNA of 2 donors. So that's where Baby Yoda comes into play.
It's the splicing.
So he would be one donor. And then I started thinking, well, what is Baby Yoda the result of Pershing's experiments? But no, it's impossible. I mean, the timeline is way off. And I started thinking about the timeline a lot because he said replica. When he said replica, the use of that term specifically made me think of Grogu, because Grogu is a replica of Yoda. We know this. But I started thinking about the timeline and stuff and Baby Yoda and how he's like 50 years old and what that means and what was going on in Star Wars on the timeline 50 years prior to the beginning of Mandalorian season 1. If we're to take Werner Herzog, his character, the client, that's what they called him, the client.
Right.
He never got a name.
No.
I think it's
Pencil.
Was a client.
The Pennsylvania.
He was a client. Baby Yoda. Yeah, Penn. His name is
Eraser.
Is Hershey. His name is Hershey. That's his name.
I was going off the Penn reference. Hershey. That's even better. I like that.
But okay, but here's my Baby Yoda thoughts, because this kind of blew my mind today when I started doing the math.
And now, Baby Yoda Thoughts by Jimmy Mack.
Baby Yoda Thoughts. Okay, so he could be like some sort of weird cloning experiment or something, right? Is he a clone of Baby Yoda? I don't know, but here's what I figured out. If we're to take Werner Herzog literally, Baby Yoda, aka the asset, is 50 years old at the beginning of Mandalorian season 1. Mandalorian season 1 starts 5 years after the Battle of Endor and the end of Return of the Jedi. Okay? 9 years after the Battle of Yavin, and many years after the Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace was that like 32 years before the Battle of Yavin. So if you start doing the math, if you think Baby Yoda is 50 years old at the beginning of The Mandalorian, that means he was born at 41 BBY before the Battle of Yavin. Okay. There's another big Star Wars birthday 41 years before the Battle of Yavin, and that is Anakin Skywalker. Anakin Skywalker and Baby Yoda might share the same birthday. And it's said that Baby Yoda, that Anakin Skywalker may or may not have been conceived because of Palpatine and Darth Sidious.
Plagueis.
Sidious to Darth Plagueis. Those guys performing experiments, trying to create life. So what if they created Anakin and Baby Yoda? They just don't know it. Or maybe they do know it. Also, another notable birthday,
That's
1 years before the Battle of Yavin, is that of Kitster. And I know he fits into this equation somewhere. Damn it. I've been saying this for years. But I just think that's interesting. This is something we've never talked about. Anakin Skywalker and Baby Yoda could have the same birthday. They're the same age. Well, they would be if Anakin lived.
Right.
But, right? We never talked about this.
No. This is all new. New. My head's spinning.
I just went down
and
the
that's
rabbit
just
hole.
the meds. I haven't even gotten to Jimmy Mac's theory yet.
I just went down the rabbit hole, and that's what I discovered.
Hey, I got to peel back the curtain here for just a minute because I see Tyler looking very busy. Tyler, I see no one in the queue. I don't know. It looks like he's screening calls, but I don't see anyone in the queue. So if you're trying to get a hold of us, 708-866-1737, that is the number to call. So Tyler, give me a thumbs up or give me a... Do we have people in the queue? Because I don't see anyone. So I'm just wondering if there's something weird on our end. You can talk. You're allowed to talk.
Yeah, there's some
How'd
folks
that
in the
happen?
queue. We got almost a full queue. So
We got a full queue. I don't see it. So I wonder if I refresh, if I will see it. That's what it was. I had to refresh. That's never happened to me before. Normally it refreshes on its own. Okay, well, I'm glad I asked. By the way, you're not Matt Bush, by the way. My buttons got all mixed up. So when I hit your button, it shows something else. But anyway, Tyler, good to have you. Thanks for screening those calls. Once again, that number 708-866-1737. And we'll get to him here in just a moment. Thanks, Ty. Appreciate it.
cool.
Good to know.
Thanks,
Tyler, Baby Yoda and Anakin Skywalker, they have the same birthday, I think.
Really?
Well, I
That's-
believe that.
that-
Yeah, I think they do. I did some research, and they were both born 41 years before the Battle of Yavin. BBY.
Whew.
Anakin Skywalker and Grogu. And those are the only notable Star Wars births in that particular time frame.
I
We
don't
know.
even know what to make of that.
We've looked. I know. Isn't that wild? It's like I don't even know if that's relevant.
Jason wasn't impressed. That's why I had to
No,
tell
I
you.
was. I'm just I'm a little foggy.
He's foggy.
I'm
He's
foggy. I'm foggy. Okay, Tyler, go back to screening calls. Thank you. All right, let's
People
get
are
to
liking
some super
Tyler's
chats.
stash too. By the
I
way,
love it. I love Tyler's stash.
Yeah.
You can tell I'm tired. I can't get those transitions. I just tell Tyler Go away. That's terrible. I shouldn't do that. I love Tyler. Let's go through some super chats here. You guys are always very generous. We appreciate that. Here's Calvin saying, Chut, happy Bendu Day. Can't listen live, but I'm looking forward to hearing Blake's take on Bo keeping the Mythosaur a secret. See you next week. Thanks, Calvin. I, too, am looking forward to such a take.
Bendu Day?
Well,
Day?
That was one of the, 3 Star Wars holidays that have been officially mentioned.
It's not a holiday.
You're up to 5?
It's not. It's the days of the week. Remember years ago when StarWars.com invented the days of the week for Star Wars? Yeah, it was Syntax Day, Tongs Day.
Well,
Zell
this
Day,
episode takes place on Tongs Day.
And Prime Day. Don't you remember? It's like somebody did a parody song, Prime Day. It's Prime Day, Prime Day. Remember that?
What my Amazon? Is that what I'm getting? I'm getting some deals on my Amazon? That's Prime Day.
This was years. Yeah, this was even years, probably even before Amazon Prime Day was even.
I don't remember that, and I can't say that I missed it.
This was a little wacky thing. The Star Wars days of the week. It's not a holiday, Bendu Day. And then later in the episode, when they're on the train, both Elia and Pershing both say, Tongs Day. They're like, another Tong. What do they say?
Tong.
Tong. Taung. Tong.
Tongs Day. Yeah, she looks at
the Tong are an alien species in the Star Wars universe that goes.
Why do they get a whole
back.
day? Every week we're paying homage to the Tongs. Why is that? What makes them so special? Tongs
Syntax Day.
By the way, this is the guy that was agreeing with Elia about Tongs Day. He was a cool-looking creature, wasn't he, on the subway?
He was cool.
I love the Coruscant subway. Wasn't very crowded, though. When you expect the subway, but they were also going, I think, in off hours. But it wasn't really peopled much.
Some people might say, oh, well, that's kind of a little too real world for my taste to see a train like that in Star Wars. Well, I'll tell you, it's not that real world, and I'll tell you why. Nobody's smoking, and everyone has their pants on.
I don't know.
This message
chairs.
is a PSA for public transit. Okay.
Looking at those orange chairs.
Okay. The orange chairs is really what makes it very, very much an earthbound kind of thing. But I love seeing the hover train fly through Coruscant. We got some great shots at Coruscant. The visuals in this episode, the special
they were
effects
fantastic.
Were cinematic, to say the least. It just makes you wonder, what can these guys do if they were actually given the budget to make a film? They would just blow minds with what they can do.
Eric from Phoenix says, did anyone else think of the Soylent Green wafers when they showed the biscuits? Probably just me. Well, not till now, Eric. Now it's all I can think of. They're people and Wookiees.
I didn't think so. That was it was an interesting test, I think, for Pershing. She put that box there, and that's contraband in the New Republic. Those cookies, believe it or not, you're not supposed to have those. And it was his willingness to take those cookies inside and start helping himself to them. I think that was a real sign to Kane, Elia Kane, that he was he would be easy. It would be easy to get this guy to break the law. He failed the simple test. It's like the serpent with the apple.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. She was quite the temptress. All right, let's go to the phones. We don't want
already.
Yeah. We've been at it almost an hour.
I still have a ton of things to say, though, and if people start saying what the things I want to say, we're going to stop the phone calls. Because I noticed a few things. There are some deep Easter eggs in this episode. I haven't even got to them. So
I don't think
I
don't think anyone's going to steal your thunder. We got.
I don't think anyone was foolish enough to do all the deep research I did, but I did.
I'm sure not.
I found out a lot of things.
Let's start with Patreon and first-time caller Curtis calling in from Kentucky. You're on the air with Rebel Force Radio. Hello. Thanks for calling. Let's try that again. My bad, Curtis. You're on with Rebel Force Radio. Hello. Curtis. There he is.
So, chut, y'all.
Chut.
Shut.
So I have an idea that the seed was planted years ago, and it's been growing and growing. And so far this season, two things have stood out to me. And the first one, well, they all have to do with Admiral Thrawn. So the first one is Bo calling Baby Yoda a good navigator. And the second one was Elia Kane being a communications specialist or officer. So in the Timothy Zahn books that came out a few years ago that are canon, Admiral Thrawn, we learned that his greatest interest is furthering the interests of the Chiss ascendancy, and that they expand their reign or their region by using these young girls who are force sensitive and have about 5 or 10 years early in their life that they're used to navigate through space. And because they're force sensitive, they can avoid planets or asteroids or all kinds of things in hyperspace. And I think that it's Thrawn's idea to clone a Jedi who has the force abilities throughout his life with a Chiss to give them more valuable and long-lasting navigators. And since his motivation is always to benefit the Chiss primarily. The second idea that I had just after this.
Wow, that's just one idea?
My different
Jeez, Curtis.
Yeah, but
all right.
That's one idea.
Lay the next one on us, because you lost me with the first one, I got to say.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
And if you haven't read the book, that might be a thing to look into.
I read the first 3 Thrawn books. Yeah. Is that the one you're talking about?
He's talking about the new Thrawn books. There's 3 Thrawn trilogies out there. How many Thrawn trilogies are there? 2 or 3? There are I'm not talking about the old expanded universe. I'm talking about new books, Disney era Thrawn novels. I think there's 6 of them. Right, Curtis?
Yes, that sounds right to me.
Okay. Curtis read them all.
So that's been my idea going since Ahsoka mentioned Thrawn, or since that episode with Ahsoka, Thrawn was mentioned. The other thing that stood out to me this last episode with Elia Kane being a communication specialist, in the books, Eli Vanto is kind of like Thrawn's right-hand man, but he's never promoted to be a lieutenant. He's always kept as a communication specialist so that he can kind of lay under the radar, but still able to get a lot done and kind of go on these missions and stuff for him, but not ever get, he's not in the spotlight. No one really thinks that he'd be doing these investigations, so to speak, for Thrawn. So I'm almost wondering if Elia Kane was a plant from Thrawn onto Moff Gideon's team to get an inside track.
Right, would that be that would require a lot of exposition for TV viewers, don't you think? A lot.
Well, no, not simply if she had a connection to Thrawn.
I'm just thinking big picture.
Sure.
That's and that would be fleshed out by what he learned from the Thrawn books about the Chiss ascendancy and all that stuff. But it could just easily be explained as something as simple as she's just an agent for Thrawn, and you see Thrawn talking to her via hologram or something. But he read the books. Curtis read the book, so he'd be like, no, this is a plan Thrawn had in place for a long time, and so that would benefit Curtis. But it doesn't really matter to the regular viewer. Much like all the expanded universe stuff that I saw in this episode, it doesn't matter to the regular viewer or anyone watching the show. It's just exciting for me to think that there's some sort of background in the novels and stuff. But why not? Why couldn't she be a secret agent for Thrawn?
Then she'd be a triple agent. Wow.
Yeah.
Man,
she'd really be.
She's
playing,
really an overachiever. Hey, thanks, Curtis. Appreciate the theories. Good theories, all. I had to cut him off because I thought he was dangerously close to pointing out some of the precious expanded universe Easter eggs that I know you want to mention to people.
No, he was talking new canon stuff, and quite honestly, I would be surprised if that stuff comes into play in The Mandalorian, because Favreau and Filoni seem, and the other writers they bring in, they really seem more intent on fleshing out the old, what's called legends now. They're more intent on that kind of stuff than they are books that Timothy Zahn wrote recently. That's how I see it all playing out.
All right. Well, let's see how Blake sees it. We got time for Blake's take. Blake. Chut, buddy.
Chut.
Hey.
Hey, bud.
Good to have you with us. What do you think? Should I be offended should I be offended that I was called an Andorian earlier this week?
That what?
I mean, so the Andorian, they're calling you an Andor fan. But also Andor was
like it's something
really
wrong
good
with
show
that.
at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. Why should I be?
No, it was a good show.
It was a good show. I shouldn't be offended by that. I should be a proud Andorian.
What was the context in which this happened? What was the context?
It was definitely thrown as a derogatory comment at me, saying, I bet this episode will please you and all your other Andorians. That's what the context was. I know when I'm being insulted. But I wear it with pride. And I know you do too, Blake. You liked Andor. But what did you think about this episode?
Yeah. All right. So I have 3-4 things on this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start off with my take, my thoughts on this episode.
Okay, let's hear them.
So I know a bunch of people, and the whole time we've basically been talking about how it's kind of like an Andor episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like the middle of it is Andor. You can tell that they took inspiration from Andor, but just like Andor, this is going to have a tie into the story. Because everything has a tie into the story that happens.
Oh, I wish that were so.
Yeah.
But go on.
Because some things will.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this whole, the whole middle piece, while Mando and Bo-Katan are out in space, the whole part with Doctor and the one girl, this could actually put meaning into the story. Because whenever they're at the Star Destroyer, he
need a cough button, Blake, there.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
Trying to think of my words.
Use your words.
Yeah. So I'll go right back to this.
Okay.
I forgot what I was going to say. All right. So my theory is that, so we know that she knows the Mythosaur is down in the water.
Mm-hmm. She's not saying anything, though.
Mando doesn't know that. And whenever she's reading it, it's about how, and she, just like how you guys were talking about earlier, how that's like the cool kid on the block. Like they'd be the most popular person if they had a Mythosaur.
Right.
That could maybe get her to rule Mandalore. But she might ride the Mythosaur, but not try to rule it by that. She's going to try to fight Din Djarin for the Darksaber. She's going to be riding the Mythosaur, kind of like how Boba Fett was with the Rancor, and fight Din Djarin.
And her target is Din Djarin. I see.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, all right, so how else is she going to earn?
Okay with...
Right, how else could she beat Din Djarin? She needs a Mythosaur. Right.
She wants to earn that Darksaber.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like that.
You're onto something there, Blake.
Yeah.
Good job, buddy. Yeah.
Because whenever she, since she was bathed in the living waters of Mandalore, because of that, they're allowing her into that clan, Din Djarin's clan.
Right.
So, with that, she can gain the trust from those Mandalorians So whenever she fights and gets the Darksaber, she can rule, and maybe they would follow.
Oh, yeah.
She'd actually have
she needs a new clan. So she can go in here, she can make friends with everybody, so that when the time comes to take the Darksaber from Din, she'll have already greased those skids with the other Mandos and maybe got Paz Vizsla to come along for the ride.
Yeah.
He seems like a tough nut to crack, that guy, with his little pea head.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
but he also seems like he's just everywhere.
Who, Bo? Everywhere?
No,
Paz.
whatever his face is.
Oh, well, yeah,
But-
he's
but-
huge. He is everywhere. Everywhere all at once. Like that movie.
He feels like he could be, because he feels like he could be a good guy, but also a bad guy, but then also a bounty hunter. He could be literally anything at a point.
Yes.
Someone wouldn't even question it.
Yeah. Yeah, he could be all of those things. You're absolutely right. He's I don't trust him. I'm going to put it that way. I don't trust anyone named Vizsla.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's a safe way.
Right. All right, Blake, buddy. Thanks so much. Always great to hear from you and your takes. Have a great one, and we'll talk to you, I'm sure, next week. Appreciate it. All right, let's go to Matt from LA, also a Patreon member. Thank you, Matt. Thanks for your patience and holding. You're on with Rebel Force Radio.
Chut, fellas. What's
Chut,
up
chut.
again?
Hey, man.
Hey.
Hey, so I got two things for you guys this
Mhm.
week, and I'll make it real quick. So one, I want to address Swank's comments here about no conflict in this episode. Let's talk about
Right.
this badass dogfight, right, that we got in the
Yeah.
first cold open. If that wasn't conflict, I don't know what is.
Well, it was conflict,
And,
but we don't know why. We don't know why. There's no connection to that Imperial remnant and and Mandalore that's been explained. We're guessing. It was cool. Don't get me wrong. There was action. Action is not conflict.
Swank's got a point there.
That's fair. Well, let me show you my theory, and you might feel a little differently.
Okay.
Right? So I was thinking about it. Who amongst any of these warlords would have TIE interceptors specifically, right? Like all of them, TIE interceptors, except for the bombers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably someone who valued the superiority of the starship more than anybody in the Empire. And there was one person who was definitely leading that charge with the TIE Defender program, and that was Admiral Thrawn in Rebels. So I think that is another clue for us.
What'd he say?
Oh, go back, Matt. We missed that. You're talking about
that was who from Rebels?
Thrawn and Rebels with the TIE Defender
Thrawn.
program.
Thrawn, it was the TIE Defender project,
Right.
is what
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
for some reason I'm
Yeah,
hearing
so
TIE
my theory
Interceptor. Yes.
Yeah. So if he's using these TIE interceptors, that's the next best thing. Like if he can't get his hands on the TIE Defender, which was scrapped as an idea for the Death
That's
Star
right.
instead, he's going to go with the next best thing, which is these interceptors. So that's my clue that we're dealing with Thrawn in that opening battle there.
That's very well
Yeah.
spelled out, Matt. Even I could understand it. Thank you.
Connected to the dots. I like that.
Yeah. So point two here, I want to talk about the New Republic, right? And how this episode, I think when we look at the season as a whole, we're going to feel, maybe it wasn't as slow. I could have cut out a thing or two, but what I enjoyed was something that I wanted out of The Force Awakens right away. And that was what the hell is going on in the New Republic, right?
Right.
What's going on in Coruscant specifically? We get this. We see what's going on. Specifically, we see how kind of weak and bureaucratic this New Republic is.
I'm not a fan of this.
Well-intended,
I'm glad you brought it up because I wanted to state I am not a fan of this making a almost immediate, we're only 5 years into the New Republic, some sort of moral equivalency already between the Empire, one of the most evil forms of government ever shown on cinema, and the New Republic. This is not what my heroes fought for, was to be just another power-hungry bureaucracy, totalitarian state that puts people in mind flayer devices and scrambles their brains. This is not what they fought for. If this is where they're going, Matt, I'm really disappointed. And it shows to me just a real vapid trough of storytelling that they're eating from, because I do not want the 3 films of the original trilogy plus, all the ancillary material to lead us back to just where we started.
Well, okay.
I hear what you're saying, Swank.
Let me pull back the reins on this a little before
3 hero characters.
Say that again, Matt.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I do think it explains how our original 3 hero characters feel about the State of the Universe by the sequel trilogy. Leia's gone off and made her own resistance. Luke has disappeared, and Han's back to smuggling. So it's clear that they're all disappointed with the.
Yeah, but my God, we're only 5 years into it. What was it all for? What was it all for? I mean, give me some good times. Hey, Matt, thanks for the call. Great thoughts.
I got to say this. You think that by blowing up the Death Star and killing Vader and the Emperor flips a switch on in the galaxy where everything is hunky dory and in a perfect society? I mean, the Empire had its boot on the throat of society for 2 decades. It's not like things are just going to immediately go back to the same. I mean, these people, not only does Pershing need reconditioning, probably the whole damn galaxy needs a mind
are
flayer.
you defending it? Are you defending that practice?
No,
it sounds like you're justifying
I'm just saying
it.
that we're looking at remnants of the previous society still. It just shows the grave effect Imperial rule had on the galaxy. You can't just say, okay, the Emperor's dead, Darth Vader's dead, the Death Star's gone, everything goes back to normal. There was an effect on society that, I mean, people had to live their whole lives with this new vibe.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but when we're talking about mind recalibration, basically,
yes,
camps where you go and you get your re-education camps. This is not something that I would at all associate with the likes of Princess Leia, Bail Organa, Obi-Wan Kenobi, any of these legendary rebels. This just seems. I don't get where they're going. I don't understand why they're in a rush. They're in a rush to create a moral equivalence between the Empire and the New Republic, and I think it's silly.
Well, here's the sad thing. And this is the vortex we're in here right now with this New Republic, is that they are so gung-ho on making sure there is no resurgence of the Empire that they are using the tools of the enemy to prevent that from ever happening again. Look at who's laying on the table here. It's Pershing. He's a parolee. He's former Imperial agent who is very interested in continuing his experiments that were funded by the Empire. And in this New Republic, they can't even let him have any of the leash, so they're fighting fire with fire.
You lock them up. You don't hook their brains up to a machine.
No, I know it's the morality behind this is weird, but the guy conducting this Mon Cal, who is the technician in charge of this device, he claims, well, it's not a mind, it's the same technology as a mind flayer, but this is a 602 mitigator, my friend.
Right.
And he says it's
not torture,
non-invasive
it's waterboarding
rehab device. He says at low levels, he said it helps. It's like shock therapy, I think, but it's like something they believe that they can control, and it's not being used at its top strength until Kane turns up the knob, but I mean, maybe it is good for you, you know? Maybe maybe it is. Maybe it is.
A little tune up on your brain. It worked great for Crosshair. It worked great for him.
Yes, but that was the Empire.
It wasn't
applying that. These guys are New Republic guys, and they have found a use for this technology they think works. This Mon Cal said he thought it was refreshing.
But can I just see an example in post-Jedi Star Wars where there was somebody out there doing some good in the universe connected to the cause of the rebellion outside of our core characters? I would love to see that there was some good done by.
Well, I mean, look at Grief Karga. Look what he's done for Navarro. He came in and he was an underworld guy, you know.
I know, but he's not associated. I'm talking about the government, the New Republic. If it just seems like they're just switching costumes.
They think they're doing something right, though, and they say at low voltage, this machine actually has benefits as far as rehabilitation and things. So, I mean, yes, mind wiping. Yeah, I get it. You're dealing with a New Republic that's very paranoid about the return of an empire again. And I think that's being represented in the way that they're acting. You know, the vibe in the New Republic is similar to the Andor Imperial vibe, the paranoia, the mind control, the whispering, the observation. You know, you see them, they're walking through the train station in this episode of The Mandalorian. Sure enough, there's some officers watching their every move, you know, probably using some device to take their blood pressure from 50 feet away or something, you know. Just it's that same.
Well,
the citizens,
I guess I'm old-fashioned.
So the citizens
I would
have
like
the
to
same
see
level
some
of
good
paranoia.
guys. I would love to see some good guys in the universe that aren't either former bounty hunters or I'd like to see some true blue.
You want it to be a little more black and white. You want it to be a little more black and white.
It was good enough for the original
Star Wars has always
trilogy.
been very black and white.
Yeah.
It's always been very black and white, and this is not quite so black and white. However, I don't, I got the same vibe you did with them using this device on this guy. I'm like, wow, they're brainwashing him. They're using this Imperial tech still, and the more things change, the more they're staying the same.
Right.
But I also see a very rational and logical progression on how the way this stuff is all going down too. So in their minds, they're trying to cure this guy of his imperial thoughts.
Yeah, and I know, and I get that in fighting, sometimes you become the thing that you hate. I get it. It makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, it's a little bit lazy and a little bit one note. Can we get some hope and optimism into the galaxy?
I think a black and white approach would be maybe a little too lazy.
I'm not saying 100%. I'm saying we have yet to see anything constructive come out of this New Republic. We've yet to see it. You point out Navarro and Grief Karga. He's doing it in spite of the New Republic. We were going to get a glimpse of it with this new series, I believe, the canceled Cara Dune series, Rangers of the New Republic. I think we were going to see some real heroes out there patrolling the galaxy and trying to keep the galaxy safe from the Imperial remnants and all of that. So maybe that was going to be the one avenue to show a little bit of that. But right now, it's just been cynicism. And I just think it's one note. That's all. Oh, great. You're another oppressive government. How creative.
Well, it's all a certain point of view, isn't it? At least in my house, when we were watching this episode, we were considering the things we were seeing going on here with Pershing and stuff actually to maybe contain elements from the scrapped Rangers of the New Republic series. Kennedy said that they were going to incorporate those concepts into The Mandalorian. And that conversation did come up in my house. Could some of this stuff be from Rangers of the New Republic? So I think, honestly, Jason, what you were going to get from that series is the exact opposite of what you wanted. I think we were going to see these guys out there patrolling the universe, trying to clean up the Empire, and occasionally straddling the line and getting into a morally gray area.
Maybe. All right, here's John. John says, let's hear it for the J maneuver Bo performed in the Gauntlet. It was like rowing a boat with one stationary oar. I absolutely love that. That was a really cool move. I tried to get a shot of it, and this was the best I could do. But when she turned off the one engine and put the one fin down and was able to make that immediate turn, that was really, really cool. Loved that.
Why do we call it a J maneuver? Why
I don't know.
A J? I maybe she went in the letter J, but I don't know what a J maneuver is.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing.
I do know that R5D4 needs a damn seatbelt or some sort of restraint. He's flying all over that cockpit.
I loved it. I love they went 0G for a moment here. R5 is just floating up.
That's good, man. Got a screenshot of that one. That's good.
All right, let's see who else we got. We got Nathan. Nathan says, where Empire was efficient and oppressive, New Republic is more incompetent and ineffectual. Amnesty seems good, but I knew she was bad news from the start. That's from Nathan. Nathan, I don't know that I disagree. One thing I did want to point out for you history buffs, is that, we had something, it was once called a conspiracy theory, but it proved to be true. It was called Operation Paperclip, and that was just following World War II. And from the period of 1945 to 1959, the United States and Europe brought in 1,600 Third Reich or Nazi scientists, engineers, and researchers, and really helped develop the whole space program, to be honest with you. So this idea of utilizing what was the word he said? Giving amnesty to those that were in service of something like Nazi Germany, or in this case, the Empire. It has its real practical roots because you also can't assume that everyone that participated was evil. A lot of people were doing it to save their own skins. I mean, until we're all in a position like that, none of us can really say for sure what we would do. Would we rat out our neighbors? What would we do? So it's interesting that it does have its own place in our history, but
for sure.
Yeah.
And we saw Tony Gilroy picking away at elements of world history as he developed Andor. So, and of course, George Lucas, he was no stranger to history books himself as he was developing the original Star Wars and the prequels. So, that's always great to see that being represented with a Star Wars spin.
Here's John. John says, I'm sad Bo-Katan may not take her helmet off again. I am too. I've grown accustomed to her face, as the song goes, but I think we'll see her face once again. I'm sure we will. I don't think she's going to stick with the covert under the armorer. I think she's going to take advantage of the safe haven for now, but I don't think that's her true nature. And maybe we'll see an evolution of that covert. Maybe we'll see the beautiful Emily Swallow as the armorer taking off her helmet, and we can see her face. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe the introduction of Bo-Katan, or Katan, whatever you want to say.
Lady Bo.
Maybe her introduction into their scene might present some friction. Maybe she'll start introducing some radical ideas.
Ooh,
you guys
what if there was a power play between or Armorer and Bo-Katan?
Yeah. She starts to really promote dissent amongst the ranks,
right?
And they start questioning their own faith as a result. I don't know. I think Bo had a come to Jesus moment when she went eye to eye with that mythosaur, and she's never going to take that helmet off again. As a matter of fact, she might even get a chin strap for that thing and have it permanently fixed.
Here's Adrian. Adrian says, can't stick around today, but so pumped to listen tomorrow. Appreciate you guys. Go RFR. Hope to see the cloning TED Talk connect to Bad Batch traits. Yeah, I think there could be a really tight connection between Pershing and Bad Batch, or maybe not Pershing personally. Could be his mother. He talked about his mother being a doctor who she died. You know, who knows? Maybe she was also looking into some of this technology. So there could be some tentacles that could reach into the Bad Batch from the Pershing fam. $10 from Turtle Wars. Thank you, Turtle Wars. That's very nice of you. What up, y'all?
You got to give me a chance to comment, you know. Swank, you're just motoring along. I don't have a chance to comment on it.
Well, it's $10 from Turtle Wars. What are you going to say? Thank you. It's $10 from Turtle Wars.
I got $10.
All
hey,
right.
no, I wanted to talk about Pershing, and everyone brings up the TED Talk. It's like, what was the purpose of that whole dog and pony show at the beginning? Because later in the episode, when Pershing introduces himself to the others living in the Amnesty housing, he introduces himself as Amnesty Scientist L52. And they all have numbers. I'm Amnesty.
That's just a number.
M34. So why? I thought they were in some sort of government-sponsored protective custody or something. You know, they had to change their identities because of all the crimes they committed as members of the Empire.
You're right. I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right.
Probably developed a few enemies along the way. However, Pershing is up on stage in front of a packed opera house, and I'm pretty sure his identity was known during those, you know, when those elite people were coming up and talking to him afterwards. Didn't they refer to him as Dr. Pershing? I mean, what's the point in giving him some sort of code number if he's going to be on stage at the opera house?
Well, what's the sense of having Sammy the Bull Gravano and witness protection, and then he's on the Howard Stern show talking about all this stuff that he did to John Gotti to get him thrown in prison? It does happen in our own world where these people are witness protection, and then they sort of live these lives of celebrities. But I think you bring up a great point, and I wondered that too, because I associated that house and the agreement that he had with the New Republic as sort of a witness protection program in a sense, sort of like that. Jim, I took it the same way. That's why they had numbers to protect their identity. That way you don't find out, hey, you're Ivan the Terrible or you're Mengele. They find out that they're just G67 or whatever. And here he was riding around in that taxi all by himself, walking into that apartment all by himself. Yeah, there didn't seem to be much concern about his safety.
Remember, as soon as Baze Malbus saw Bodhi Rook in Rogue One and just saw that he was an Imperial pilot, he wanted to kill him. An Imperial pilot, let me at him.
That's right.
Remember that? What was he going to do? Just start like ripping the guy apart? So obviously, they would have been put at risk if they were thrown out there in a society as former Imperials. I mean, just imagine. So I didn't understand why they needed those designated code names, because, you know, after being on stage, that's how we get introduced to Pershing.
I think he's unique.
Being assimilated.
I think those other ones are more typical of what's going on in that house, in that asylum. Keep wanting to say asylum. Amnesty. In the Amnesty housing facility.
Yes.
I think they're more typical.
Yeah, and then he gets the job working in the cubicles, just like I thought Cyril Karn was going to come over and say, hey, you doing anything for lunch? But
the cube farms in Star Wars all look the same now.
Yeah. Well, they look all the same anywhere else anyway.
I suppose. That's true.
But, you know, what's he doing? He's just archiving old data from the Empire, and they're going to destroy those floppy disks. But even the character that is handing out his work on that cart, he's got all those disks. He seems surprised that someone like Pershing is there doing this mundane data entry. It's like, somebody with your skills should. What are you doing here, man? And
he should be working in a lab somewhere.
Right. And that's what Pershing wants, obviously. You know, I don't think Pershing's a bad guy necessarily.
No, I don't think
he's
so
all
either.
about I think he's all about the science and discovery and the research and all of that. I mean, that's what he does. That's his passion. And he clearly states that his desire to continue with his cloning experiments were to save lives, like his mom's. You know, his mom died. They didn't have any way to replicate, clone the organs and that she needed. So he wants to continue that work. So he's a good guy. He's got a good heart, you know, and he never, like I said, in the season 2 season finale, he never put up a fight against Mando and Cara Dune and Boba Fett. He gave them all the information he could and helped them out considerably. So and he did everything he could to make sure Baby Yoda wasn't harmed.
Yeah.
So
Well,
all
I
in all,
agree.
he's a
I
good
think he's a
guy.
good
He's
guy.
just he's in it for the work and stuff, and then you know why she had to, you know, all of the dominoes that have to fall for her Kane to be in proximity to Pershing as the government is assigning them. I mean, so there has to be something else.
Yeah,
there has to be something else at play. There's another.
It was not luck.
There's
it was not coincidence.
Other influence. There's other influence at play. She and Pershing, they seem like they have pretty decent chemistry. She wants to help him out, so she takes him out for ice cream, and they go to Monument Plaza there, which is, I mean, my God, let's go far back into Star Wars. I saw a lot of fans getting excited seeing Monument Plaza featured here in The Mandalorian, and you should, because this is concepts. Again, I brought up the name Kevin J. Anderson at the beginning of the show. He's the guy who sort of fleshed out and built these environments we're seeing in The Mandalorian. This particular place, Monument Plaza, is from his book 1997, The Illustrated Star Wars Universe. And a lot of people got really excited when they saw the mountaintop poking up, which was something that you know, a lot of fans got excited because they read about it in the new High Republic novel, The Light of the Jedi. There was a reference to it, but this thing goes way back. This little mountaintop sticking out of the ground. It was something conjured up by Kevin J. Anderson in the 90s, first for the Illustrated Star Wars Universe. Actually, I think it appeared in one of his books in the Jedi Academy trilogy, which there were a lot of references to some of that stuff in this episode too, especially if you were watching with the closed caption turned on, because some of these references you couldn't like audibly hear, like when the droid Uber driver was taking him through Coruscant. The droid Uber driver was acting as if he was just a great little concierge. There, he was giving him all of these sights to see throughout Coruscant, and some of those were also inspired by Kevin J. Anderson stuff. Here's one of his books here, Jedi Search. And here's another one of his books, The Illustrated Star Wars Universe. And in this book, you have Coruscant designs that were used in this episode of The Mandalorian. Monument Plaza being one of them. You see the pavilions here. This is all artwork done by Ralph McQuarrie, featuring those cone-shaped pavilions that you see as they're walking through the plaza in the episode. That's clear as a bell. And that's the entertainment district of Coruscant. But Monument Plaza, now they blended the entertainment district and Monument Plaza into one place. Monument Plaza was actually meant to be a different place. And this is the only place where you can see actual Earth on Coruscant. And you see it right there in the middle. There's the top of the mountain. And so in Mandalorian, they took that mountaintop and they moved it over here into this area of Coruscant where the entertainment district is, with all those cone-shaped buildings. And I thought that was pretty cool. This is not concept art for Star Wars done by Ralph McQuarrie. This is artwork specifically designed for this book by Kevin J. Anderson, The Illustrated Star Wars Universe. We saw the same locale in Clone Wars. In season 2, the episode was, what was the name of that episode? Jason, I sent you some video of it, and you'll see it's an animated version.
You're
of
talking about the
locale
Duchess of
we actually
Mandalore.
see. The Duchess of Mandalore. That's it. I couldn't remember it. I had it written down here somewhere. But yeah, I found myself pouring through old Clone Wars episodes today to look at this footage. And that's what I really love about being introduced to new elements in Star Wars, is then to just go back and see where all these little Easter eggs and callbacks come from. But there was this episode of season 2 of the Clone Wars where Obi-Wan met up with Satine. There they are, right in front of the mountaintop rock there.
Rock.
Yeah, you can't touch it. And that's because like people would come by and they would kind of carve off a little piece for a souvenir,
Right.
And so they had
That's
to put
not
that
the
droid
Berlin
there to
Wall.
make sure or Plymouth Rock,
Plymouth Rock.
That's where people just can pick away at it to where it's like Plymouth Pebble. But yeah, this is animation first seen back in season 2 of the Clone Wars, episode 14 of season 2, Duchess of Mandalore. And I just love seeing these environments. First in animation, now in live action for the first time, while an upbeat version of March of the Resistance from the Force Awakens soundtrack was playing in the background. It's not like the first time we've had that happen in Star Wars either. They did it in Rebels. They did it in Rebels. So they call the mountain is the Umate or Umati. Maybe I forget how they said it. Umati. Back in the day, it was the Minari Mountains, but then it became the Umati, and it was mentioned in Shadows of the Empire. Way back in '96, there was a group of monks that were devoted to worshiping the top of that little mountaintop there and on Coruscant. So, yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I thought, those little callbacks right there are the things that just drive me, it melts my face as an old school Star Wars fan. So much more than just random placement of weird props in Luthen's shop. Like, this stuff really has value to me, as opposed to just like random putting random.
It's great. Yes, you want to. Yeah, it's got to be more than props and greeblies and things like that. When they can actually provide locations that have real meaning to fans going back decades, even if it doesn't matter if most of the people watching the show don't get it. It doesn't matter. It's one of those things. If you know, you know. And in this case, you know. Here's Salby Crumb says, you're helping the New Republic is the new good soldiers follow orders. That's what I'm afraid of, Sal. I thought Elia was setting Pershing up to be kidnapped back by Empire remnants. Hard to believe she's all in on the Republic. No, she's not. She's a double agent. Say hashtag save the turtle gators. Thanks, bud. Thanks for the thought. Again, I really believe that she's a double agent. I don't think that she is all in on the Republic.
If you look at it on the surface level, though, you can say, well, look at her. She, everything that happens in this episode reinforces the notion that she is a rehabilitated Imperial who is living the life of a solid New Republic citizen who will do anything that's best for the New Republic, including entrapment of her former fellow employees in the Empire. Poor guy, man, he walked right into that too.
Yeah.
And she set him up. She set him up bad. It's a trap. I know they made a callback to that silly Admiral Akbar, it's a trap thing, by having somebody say it to a Mon Cal. Okay. Can we just officially put the lid on all the it's a trap stuff with Mon Calamari and Admiral Akbar and stuff? It's so stupid. I just feel like dumber every time it happens, especially in canon stuff. This is a joke, a throwaway thing they did on Robot Chicken 100 years ago. Let's give it up, please. So her name is Elia.
Mm-hmm.
and Elia is Elia.
Oh,
She set up our boy Pershing really bad. I've been waiting the whole show to say that. Elia is Elia.
Sorry it took so long. What was it?
I know. I should have said it during my opening statements, but I don't know what happened.
All right.
There's just so much going on in this episode. At least for me. Now you open it saying there's nothing going on here. God, it's like every 5 seconds.
There's a lot of great
I'm freeze framing. I'm looking stuff up.
But that's not what I'm talking about when I say stuff going on. I'm talking about plot. I'm talking about advancing the story. That's what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah. I like, again, sometimes to me, that's like the most valuable thing in Star Wars is all that advancing the plot and all that stuff. And then other times it's just me being in Star Wars. They're in the universe, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And this episode put me in the universe. Big time.
All right, let's talk to David from Boston, Patreon member. Hey, David, you're on with Rebel Force Radio. I got to step away, which means you're on with Jimmy Mack.
All right,
hey,
David Swank.
Well, shut up, guys. That's fun with Jimmy Mack.
Yeah.
Hey, I tell you, I was talking with Tom. One thing I've really enjoyed about this series, and even seen it in Bad Batch as well, is like the different genres it's exploring. Like in this episode, I could see elements of the Third Man. I imagine you're familiar with that film. And then also you got elements of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And so when you have like Blake on here, who you guys like turned into a rock star, I think it's great. I think it's just a great learning experience for people to see all these other movies that they go back and discover, and just Star Wars was all about that for me as a kid. Got me watching Kurosawa movies at 13 years old. So
really?
I'm enjoying that.
At 13, you were watching Kurosawa?
Oh God, yeah! It was like having my mom take me to the library to see to get a copy of Seven Samurai on VHS. So
really. Interesting.
It's
see, like all that stuff that those things that influenced George Lucas, especially the Kurosawa stuff, that was never really on my radar until much later in my fandom. Like in the 70s, it was like, yeah, Star Wars it's inspired by westerns and things like that, and war films.
Oh yeah,
but I don't. The conversation around Japanese films, I didn't really hear much until, probably the 90s. Like when Bill Moyer started interviewing George Lucas and stuff like that. And he really started opening up about the things that truly inspired him about Star Wars. But I can't tell you how many people have told me about the huge influence of Kurosawa's Hidden Fortress on the original Star Wars, who've never actually seen Hidden Fortress. It's amazing how many people know that little tidbit of knowledge, but they've never seen Hidden Fortress. Now you, on the other hand, you were getting your mom to take you to the library. Like what year was that, would you say?
Oh God, well that would have been maybe it was like 40. So it would have been it was probably around the time of when Empire came out. I think like Star Wars or one of those.
That's amazing.
Lucas was talking about the influence of Kurosawa. And, I grew up going to movies with my mom. So, and that's it was funny, in Rebels, I remember AP5 has this little musical interlude. My mom took me to musicals. So I remember seeing a re-release of Oliver Twist with her. And you see elements in Bad Batch a few weeks ago with the whole Fagin and Oliver Twist and Bill Sykes when they're on that planet there. So it's just fun, and especially with someone like Blake, just all this learning stuff that can get out to him, and all this new movies he can discover. Hopefully, one Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's still a little early, but it's funny the way they're sitting around the table and talking, and then he kind of gets the shock treatment. Also reminds me of Zarkov getting his mind wiped in Flash Gordon, taking us back to Flash Gordon.
Sure.
But,
Well,
there's
I
we have a lot. I think we have a lot of groundwork that's being laid here. And then Kane, it's all in her name. She's a baddie. But I think we're starting to see the elements of probably the third order rising here. And I think that's where this is all leading into.
For sure.
Yes, I agree with you. You know, at first, I was watching this episode and I was listening to Pershing. He was talking about all the way he was combining the DNA, and that's not a strand cast, is it, Jason? The definition of strand cast I thought was taking multiple different DNA and creating something that's not a clone. You know, it wouldn't be an exact clone. But he calls them replicas. It gets real confusing there. But I thought maybe we might be starting getting some information about who Baby Yoda is, why that period of time is missing once he was removed from the Jedi Temple, how those pirates ended up obtaining him, which kicked off Mandalorian season 1. How did all that happen? I thought maybe we might be opening the door to that a little bit with some of this dialogue coming from Pershing. But no, I quickly realized that this is more or less setting the foundation for the arrival of Snoke, the return of Palpatine, all of that stuff. And I appreciate an effort being made to provide some sort of substance to the sequel trilogy storyline, because one thing is for certain, those movies aren't going to be erased from canon or anything like that. They're here to stay. And so I think the more foundation you provide for them, the better off the whole experience will be for us. You never know. Maybe 10 years from now, we'll watch the sequel trilogy and everything will make sense in it. And it'll have much more substance than it currently does.
The Wikipedia definition of strand cast says that it's not a direct cloned replicate of the donor, but created from an engineered template. So that's what they credit Snoke as being. Snoke, and I believe that's also in the one of the visual guides for Rise of Skywalker, Last Jedi, is that Snoke is a strand cast.
Okay. All right. I don't think all that stuff has been totally fleshed out yet.
Oh,
at
of course
this
not.
point.
No.
And I would like to think the things that Pershing was talking about as he was addressing the crowd at the Opera House is essentially setting up the origin of Snoke, which is necessary.
And strand casting. Otherwise, why go through showing us how they were ripping the DNA strand apart into two pieces and then reassembling it? That's what strand casting is, I think, going.
But also, Pershing made it seem like he was on the verge of discovering something with this technique.
Right. However, combining some of these traits.
Din and Queel reference strand casting in season 1 as if it's something that's been around for a while. So,
right.
And this is clearly after season 1. So,
right. And also, Pershing references that it was technology that was available elsewhere, but not available in the system where he and his mother lived. So, and he wanted to expand that technology into other parts of the galaxy so that everyone could benefit. But yeah, odd that.
Well, I think all cloning was eliminated as soon as the Empire destroyed Camino.
Yep.
Right.
It was the Coruscant Accords or something they called it.
Right. So but I just think the Empire was hoarding the technology.
Yes, they were. That's what we're seeing in the Bad
And then
Batch.
it became a law. It became a law that was banning it throughout the galaxy, I guess. But Pershing was carrying on with his experiments. That's why I seem to think that he was working while the Empire was still functioning. And he was carrying out scientific experiments on cloning during that time. And then when the Empire crumbled, he hooked up with Werner Herzog and Herzog was able to give him the resources so he could continue his experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Herzog answered to Moff Gideon, and I think Moff Gideon answers then to Palpatine. Or whatever Palpatine has cooking. Whatever his plan B is, his contingency plan. Yeah.
All right. We've got some more super chats we want to get through. Thank you to Peter. He's always here and always acting as a great moderator and helper to us here in the chat. Peter says a shout out to the regular. He's an unofficial moderator. He's not. Don't be calling him a mod or anything. I'm just saying he's always taking on that. Whether he is officially or unofficially, he's taking on that leadership role. We appreciate it.
Camp counselor.
Yeah, camp. I like that. Yeah, and he will send your underwear up the flagpole if you misbehave. A shout out to the regular chat crew that show up for the after shows each week. What a great group of people that gather here. So much fun talking with you all. I consider you all friends. May the force be with you. Thank you, Peter. Feeling is mutual, I'm sure. Scott from St. Louis says, Scott St. Louis says, can Blake's sign-off be, I have spoken?
Yeah.
Might be able to make that happen when we let Blake go. I like that. Here is Curtis. He says, remember when Gideon said Grogu means more to him than you could imagine. Obviously, Gideon wants Pershing back. Thoughts on Grogu being a clone? All right, there's a lot there. I do remember when he said that. I also remember when Mando said it right back to him. Obviously, Gideon wants Pershing back. That doesn't seem obvious to me, because if they wanted him back, I think that would have been some sort of a kidnapping as opposed to scrambling his brains. I think that he is a loose end. I think he feels like he can get that technology or that expertise elsewhere, but it's too risky to leave this guy alive going around giving public speeches about what he knows.
Mm-hmm. And what's up with Moff Gideon? You know, first episode of this season, we were told he was being tried for his crimes. Now, in this episode, we hear rumors. We hear a rumor he may have escaped from while they were taking him to the tribunal.
Right.
He was en route to the tribunal. Maybe he escaped, or maybe he was hooked up to a mind flayer himself. And he's just, you know, a bag of vegetables. But it's
what if he's living on the third floor of the Amnesty building under an assumed name of L73?
Ooh, never thought that L73 could possibly be Moff Gideon. How is this so?
Yeah. I didn't know it until
I mean,
he tried to borrow a cup of sugar from me. And I'm like, this guy looks awfully familiar. No, I don't know.
I like the idea of Moff Gideon escaping.
Mm-hmm.
But the other guy says, oh, that's just a cover-up story.
It was a cover story, right? For the real story.
Which is he was hooked up to a mind flayer.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what's up with Moff Gideon.
We don't.
I'd like to think he is in custody, but we don't know. I mean, we're getting other stuff thrown out there, other variables. Anything is possible at this point. He could be standing in front of the war tribunal. He could have escaped. He could be hooked up to a mind flayer. He could be.
Isn't there a mind flayer in Stranger Things? Yeah. Season 2
is that the weird thing that like the head opens up and it's like a banana?
Well, that's the Demogorgon. That's the Demogorgon. The mind flayer was the big thing made out of like smoke. It seemed almost like. I'm looking at Tyler here to see if he can give me
after I quit.
if that's the mind flayer. Yeah, Tyler's giving me the thumbs up. Okay, good. Tyler, you know I can see you, right? I can see you the whole time we're doing the show. Okay, good. Just didn't want you to think I was creeping or anything. Here's a Kana Stone says, I think it would be interesting if Bo ends up falling further into the covert and it's Creed, and Din, by contrast, pulls away. That could be complex. Yeah, that could very well be. And he follows it up with all that said, I actually think that won't happen because this season will be about Bo's redemption. What do you think, Jim? Is this all about Bo's redemption this season? And she's going to find herself firmly ensconced in the loving arms of her fellow Mandos once more?
Well, the fellow Mandos she's with right now already consider her to be redeemed. You know, she's bathed in the water. She's kept her helmet on. She says, this is the way when someone else says this is the way. She's doing everything exactly the way she's supposed to be doing it. She's down with the creed.
Down
with the creed. So
I keep thinking of Creed Bratton. I can't help it.
Of
But
course.
Creed Bratton from
Of course.
The Office.
Or Adonis Creed. Or Apollo Creed. There you go,
Yeah.
Carl Weathers.
Right.
So what kind of redemption? I think he means in the eyes of the Mandalorians that once followed her.
Oh, okay.
Again, I think
ones that
she
ditched her.
acquired her leadership. She acquired that leadership through illegitimate means. It was a sham. And that's why Mandalore fell, because she was cursed. She was not to lead Mandalore because she didn't win the Darksaber in combat. It was gifted to her. So how does she get redeemed from screwing up in the first place? I mean, she needs to succeed first before she gets any sort of redemption. I've yet to see.
I think there's all different ways to define this redemption. There's the strictly the spiritual way of the creed, which she already is redeemed in the eyes of the armorer. But then there's redemption from what we are sort of assuming was a failure in leadership, a perhaps illegitimate, ascendancy to the throne. Yeah, there's a lot to that Bo-Katan, but I'm enjoying it, and I'm slowly becoming a Bo-Ka fan. I will say that.
A Bo-Ka fan.
Bo-Ka fan.
Nice.
Here's
Well played.
John from Patreon supporter. John calling in from New York. Hello, John.
Hey guys, Chut. Hey Jimmy, I just wanted to mention that the device that you're thinking of that can read your blood pressure from a distance is called a tricorder, but that's another show. But sorry, it's a Star Trek joke. Since you're on this, Jimmy, I've noticed, Jimmy, you're on this Star Trek kick where you can't help but talk about Star Trek. You're trying so hard to avoid it, but you can't help it. I've noticed it's a trend. It's not your fault. Star Trek's good. But
well, it's good right now. It's been good for a couple of months or so. I don't know. Those guys running Trek have already committed great crimes against humanity in recent years. I mean, before we start claiming they're redeemed by the living waters, maybe they should give us a couple more months of quality stuff. But so far, Picard has been good, and I do like Strange New Worlds now too. So there you have it.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you.
I don't think it's better than Star Wars, though. I'll tell you that right now. Star Wars all the way.
Nothing's better than Star Wars.
Star Wars
That's
number
right.
one.
Quick, Star Wars number one. Quick shout out to my roommate Ian Taylor. He has been so patient with me tonight. I told him to be quiet for like the last 2 hours while I wait to get on the call.
Oh, you don't.
Super cool about it.
That's really nice. Well, thank you to the roommate. I don't think he has to be that quiet, because it's not like your roommate making noise while you're on hold is going to interrupt the show. But I appreciate the.
How do you know? How do you know he's not like the bass player for Guar or something? You know, I mean, God, he keeps them up all night, probably making loud music.
Funny you say that. He actually is a pretty big musician here in New York. So if you guys want to hear him, he's Ian Taylor.
All right,
yeah.
Ian Taylor.
He's actually really, really good. Yep. But moving on to Star Wars, I wanted to say that Jason, I feel like you're kind of like in and out. Like you're on board with this episode, but you're kind of not, because earlier you had said how like the sandwich nature of the you had mentioned how you liked the Mandalorian and Bo-Katan stuff at the beginning and at the end, but I can't remember exactly the wording that you said, Jason.
I thought it was sort of just stretched out unnecessarily. It was just a little too much time with Dr. Pershing.
Would it have been better? Would it have been better if maybe they like went back and forth between each one like they do in like Andor, because I got the feeling that so as I was watching as I was watching the Pershing stuff, I was like, this is great, but let's go back and forth. That would be better. And they didn't do that, and that's okay. It's not a deal breaker. I'm not going to break up with the Mandalorian or anything.
No, and
but
that's the thing. That's the thing. Hold on, John. But no, that's the thing is that we sit here for a couple of hours and talk about in this case, 53-minute episode, and we're going to talk about all aspects of it, what we like, what we don't like, and it's comical and frustrating. I'm not talking about you, but when you look at the chat or you see the emails coming in after an episode drops, and if you say anything at all negative about the episode, oh, you're one of them, you're negative, you hate Star Wars, you're not a fan. It's like, I love Star Wars and I love The Mandalorian, and I had a great time watching this episode. But if I'm forced to be critical, which I am because this is the show that I do, I'm going to pick nits. And I just feel in general, we had a lot of setting of the table with this universe from Filoni and Favreau, and we've had very few hearty meals. Really great stuff, really great exposition, really great setup, but we're almost 2.5 seasons in, and why don't we know anything more about Baby Yoda than what we did when we started?
But
they're precious mystery.
I mean, but Jason, can I push back on that?
Of course you can. Yes.
I'm sorry. I want to push back on that, Jason.
Gentle. I've been ill, so be gentle.
Favreau recently came. Oh, okay. All right. Well, Favreau did recently. You guys mentioned last week that Favreau did come out with some stuff and said, like, we don't, we're not ending this anytime soon. We don't have a game plan. We're probably going to be bringing this. We're probably going to. I mean, it seems to me like they've got plans to drag this out for a few more seasons. And I mean, just reading the tea leaves, it sounds like the executives are on board because Mandalorian's the flagship. That's the moneymaker. Baby Yoda's the moneymaker. And I have I feel like they have time to do that, Jason. I feel like they have.
Oh, they definitely have time.
I totally know where you're coming from.
Yeah, they totally.
I know where you're coming from, though. I totally feel that.
Yeah, they have lots of time, but I would like to see them solve at least one mystery, and then they can move on to the next one.
Well,
because there's a lot of things they can talk about.
On to the next, I want to.
Which mystery? Let's go through the list of the mysteries we need solved. I want to know what mysteries need to be solved. Baby Yoda's origins. Okay, yeah, we'd like to know more about that. And what?
Can we know more about Moff Gideon? What his interest is?
Moff Gideon? Well,
can we learn more about the cloning facilities? Can we get some definitive information about the cloning facilities?
Clone facilities? Yes.
That's fair.
Clone facilities. They've been presented to us.
I wanted to touch base on one more thing before you guys let go, which was about the Bo-Katan, the fact that Bo-Katan's basically in the covert now. And Jim, Mr. Mack, you had mentioned how Bo-Katan is, she's kind of like, I don't want to say seeing the light, so to speak, but you guys had talked about how Bo-Katan is kind of seeing, starting to like kind of be more on board with the religious aspect of it. And there was something I wanted to say, but it was very much. Oh, I remember what it was now. I'm sorry for the long-winded part. Y'all had mentioned how Bo-Katan technically was bathed by the living waters, but didn't really participate the way that Din Djarin did, being that Din Djarin, he made a ceremony out of it. He was very pious about the whole thing, and that meant a lot to him. Whereas Bo-Katan was basically thrust into that and had to perform life-saving action as a Mandalorian, which then required her to be bathed into the living waters. Now, I don't want to get too religious here, but if I'm not mistaken, there's and I'm not a biblical scholar, but there happens to be something in the Bible about faith without works is dead, right? And so I think that if you take that aspect and you look at how Bo-Katan basically spurred into action at a moment's notice, which caused her to be, bathed into the living waters, and then had that, that basically that spiritual experience coming face to face with the face of, a faith that she was up until now largely disconnected from. You basically have a moment where, her actions spurred her into action, which caused her to basically get closer to the faith. And the armor, being a religious leader, I just want to point back to how you guys were like, well, how could the armorer know if Bo-Katan was really on board with the way? Well, the armorer is a religious leader. She can see these things, and I think that just want to put this all into a spiritual perspective, since that was what was offered up earlier. But thanks for taking my call, guys. You're doing a great job.
No, it was
Hold
great.
on. I want to hold on. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere, because I want to address something you said about preparing for this bathing in the living waters thing and religion. I mean, the thing I draw the most parallels between a Mandalorian bathing in the living waters is that of baptism. Baptism. And who gets baptized the most? Babies. Do they prepare for the sacrament at all? No, they don't know what's going on. They get their head dipped in the water. Usually they cry. So, but yet the sacrament of baptism is legitimate for them. The eyes of the church sees it that way. The faithful that follow the church see it that way. And there's no preparation done at all by the babies. So I don't know what kind of statements Bo needed to make or anything like that. I think it's more important about what she did after she was submerged in the waters. She didn't take her helmet off, and it appeared she was adhering to the way. So that's where her birth comes from. I mean, baptism means birth. It's the birth of a faith that's supposed to last you a lifetime. It's your way of officially being seen as a faithful, a member of the flock in the eyes of the church.
So again, I'm not a scholar, but part of some of my experience as an adult and someone that does subscribe to that religion is that there seems to be groups of Christians that are okay with baptism as babies without the choice, and there are those Christians that believe that baptism requires the choice and the conscious choosing of the adult.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can only assume that Bo-Katan was choosing to jump into the waters. Now, what's interesting, though, that you point out about the baptism of children is that Bo-Katan mentioned in the last episode that she had to partake in a ritual as a child. And so how much choice did she really have? So I think I'm not disagreeing with you. I just think it's super interesting that these things are really intersecting this way in Star Wars fandom. It's a fascinating conversation. I'm lucky that I get to talk to you guys about it.
No, thank you. We're lucky to be able to take your call. But something also to keep in mind that go beyond religion, it goes even beyond faith. Are those waters actually magical? That's the thing. I mean, there might be a substance within the molecular structure of that water that is actually magic.
And what would it do? What would the magic do?
Well, maybe the magic is in the purification, the way it purifies you as a Mandalorian. Maybe there's some sort of way to scientifically measure that, much like the Jedi measure ability to use the Force by a midichlorian count. Maybe there's a way to measure the effect that the living waters have on you once you bathe in them as a Mandalorian. Maybe only the armorer knows how to read that. I don't know.
I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to bathe in the waters of FJ DeSanto, who's a guest caller right now. FJ, can you hear us?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, what is this like Catholic school shit that I grew up with, like listening to the waters and the baptism and all this shit. Look, Bo-Katan is playing everybody.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
Bo-Katan, she realizes this is her way back in to take everything over. She's so much smarter than that. Come on. This isn't like, and this is her Trojan horse. She didn't bathe in the water. She just saved his life. She didn't sit there and was like,
FJ,
I'm going to do this.
I might believe that if it wasn't for the fact that so far this series has seemed very straightforward. I love the idea of there being a big twist like that. I think it's awesome. And she had me guessing.
Coming.
It's
I told
coming?
you guys on the last time, my profit or loser last time is that there's going to be a fight between him and her, and it's coming.
It's coming. You know, we had a young man that listens to the show say that he suspected that she may ride that Mythosaur herself as a takedown of Din Djarin and get the Darksaber.
I can see that. I mean, I think like you got Paz Vizsla, all those guys are all gonna. She's gonna try and turn those guys over. That like she might be moved, but like she seems moved at the end of the episode. You know what I mean? Like she seems like, oh, I'm back in, and she's found some purpose. But she's been sitting there by herself in that castle for how long? Sitting there and going, how's my way back in? Everybody deserted me. And this is the, no pun intended, this is the way back in to take shit over. That's what's happening here.
She's playing everybody.
Slowly, I don't even know. You know, like in her mind, she's the hero, right? Like she's not like quote unquote evil villain, right? But she's sitting there going, this is my way back in. This is my birthright. This is everything I was meant to be. And she's reclaiming that. So, you know, in her point of view, and it's weird because I've been watching a lot of like review videos of the show about the Darksaber and stuff like that. It's like the Darksaber was kind of handed around. I don't know why she didn't just take it, but I think you're right. I think she's going to do something that's going to mess up everything. And this is still going to be a battle of the Mandalorian, you know, because she's telling him how many seasons she's been telling him, like, dude, you're in a cult.
Right.
You're with these whackers and all this shit. And then all of a sudden she's just like down with them. I don't think so. I think she's sitting there. This isn't, you know, someone posting, Bo is redeemed. She's not redeemed. She's not redeemed. She's looking at this as a way in to get
power,
the Darksaber, but also to lead Mandalore. And now that it's been proven, Mandalore isn't poisoned. It isn't, etc. She can go reclaim the planet.
So it's not a surprise to you then that she's not sharing that information about the Mythosaur.
Exactly. That's I forgot to mention that. There's a reason she doesn't mention that. We're going to find out at some point. But there's a reason she was like, what'd you see down there? What'd you see? Blah, blah, blah. Because if he saw the Mythosaur, he'd be running back to these guys, be like, dude, the fucking Mythosaur is here.
Right, of course.
Like Mandalore is safe and all that stuff. And by the way, I don't know if it was Jimmy, I think you were saying that the waters have magical powers and all that stuff. I think
yes.
You're right about that. I think there's something to it. Yeah.
Well, so do you think then that the Children of the Watch, is there any legitimacy in their approach to being a Mandalorian? Is there any true benefit to living their life the way they live? I mean, is there, like the living waters, are they magic? Does that provide legitimacy to the Children of the Watch and the way they live their lives? Should all Mandalorians keep their helmets on?
Thing. Well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I will tell you that there's an interesting thing in the last episode that I think ties into all this. When he's flying to the planet and he's talking to Grogu and he's like, I've actually never been on Mandalore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, so who knows? And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, there's also a mention that the Watch, or these guys, or whoever he belongs to, right? They were banished ages ago. Right.
Yes.
So
to that moon.
She's
Concordia.
looking. Yeah.
Yes.
And she's looking at it like, I am the heir to all this shit. Like that's why I think, she's gonna. I'm not saying she's like double crossing an evil, but I think she's going to sit there and play her hand at some point and be like, follow me, I'm the one who blah, blah, blah. I think she's going to use these guys in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Either get back Mandalore or go back to her, the people who deserted her. She's going to go on revenge and all that stuff. And I think that's really, really cool.
FJ,
I'd like to think she had some sort of epiphany, though. I mean, like legitimate epiphany by being in those living waters, by coming face to face, eye to eye with the Mythosaur, by not removing her helmet afterwards. I think
you're not wrong.
Kind of shows that it had some sort of divine impact on her.
Yeah, but I
say it again. Say it again, FJ. I like when you say I'm not wrong.
No, I agree that I think it's an epiphany for her, but it's going to tie into still her motivation. Like she might become like a religious fanatic, but it's going to be where she's still going to be like, it's my birthright. It's my blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's everything. And she sort of has found a new way to do it. Like I said, it's not a sinister thing. It's almost like reclaiming her birthright through these guys.
FJ, earlier in the show, I want to take your... Oh, sorry.
No, keep going.
I was going to say, earlier in the show, I was a little bit critical because I thought, here we are 2 seasons in. If you add the 2 episodes of Book of Boba Fett, tack that on here, we're 2.5 seasons into The Mandalorian, and there are still so many questions. The show seems very light on giving any definitive answers. We threw a few out just a little bit ago. Grogu's origin. Even if you don't even need the full origin story. It'd be nice to know what happened in that 50 years, the 50 years that he was missing. Moff Gideon's background. Where does he come from? Does he have ties to Palpatine? Does he have ties to Thrawn? The cloning facilities, what's going on there? That was season 1 that we got our first glimpse of those. Again, a lot of groundwork. Why does there seem to be, or am I misreading this, a reluctance on the creatives to give us something definitive?
I don't think it's reluctance. I mean, I think it's, look, think about, just backtrack a little bit. You paid off the initial conceit of trying to find Grogu's people. And he makes a choice, Luke or Mandalorian. It goes with Din Djarin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you successfully paid that off. You've successfully paid off.
Well, wait. Successfully paid off.
Initial,
wait, sorry, FJ, go back. Successfully paid off which?
The search for Grogu. Like, you don't need his story. And by the way, in the trailer, remember, we talked about this last time I was on. There's some Jedi flashback in there. So I'm wondering if that ties into Grogu's backstory. At a certain point, you don't know Yoda's backstory. You don't need to know at a certain point, at least in my opinion. Like, it's whatever. You know what I mean? Like, look, they still haven't brought back IG-11. There's still the pirates. You got a lot more episodes coming. You got like 7 episodes, right? Is it 10 this year?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't want to come across like I don't want to come across as though I'm not enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. I just would like some answers. Even you say that the payoffs, I mean, even the payoff of Moff Gideon getting arrested. Well, that payoff lasted all of what? An episode and a half, if that. Now we know that he's potentially escaped. So now that's out there, and that's a mystery. I'm enjoying the ride. I just would like to see them maybe tackle one of these ideas, these concepts, sort of once and for all. That's all.
Yeah, I don't have that problem. I like that they have new things.
I don't either.
The whole, Mandalore thing and the stuff with, all this, Coruscant side mission episode, which I thought was really, really cool. It's weird. Like, I just feel like Favreau just writes these things out and is just like, oh, we're going to go over here for a little bit. Because it's like, this episode reminded me of the Boba Fett structure.
Yes.
Right? Where it's like, all of a sudden, we're going to go into a completely different story here. And, and I still think it's all leading to, all right, everybody's saying 8 episodes. Sorry, 8 episodes, and so this is only the third one, right? So you still got plenty of time, and they know they're going to be a 4th season, right? So there is long-term storytelling.
There's always another season. That's right. Believe me, I'm a.
No, they know they've already written the 4th one, so you're sitting there. I think there's huge curveballs coming.
Well,
I'm going to come back.
I'm enjoying it.
And I still think it becomes they want Yoda, Grogu, to jumpstart Palpatine's return, or everybody keeps saying they think it's the birth of the First Order. I think it's weird because it's like it's still 30 years before the First Order sort of emerges publicly. So it's curious how they sort of set that up in a way like, are there other agents of Palpatine, et cetera, or people, there's a lot that even in these 3 episodes that they've sort of put together, the pirates, the stuff with, with the Mandalorians, with what's going on Coruscant. It's setting up a lot of really interesting stuff. I really like it.
Well, you haven't weighed in on one of the debates that we're having is the motivation behind doing what they did to Pershing at the end in the betrayal of Elia Kane. Was it revenge? Was it to tie up loose ends? Was there some other reason? Why send this, what we assume is a double agent, out to get Pershing?
It's a good question because I was actually talking to my wife about that after we watched the episode. It was she's clearly tying up the sort of remnants of whatever the first season stuff. So is she the hand of Gideon? Is she working for somebody bigger? I don't know. I thought it was really interesting because I thought, well, she'll at least steal his technology. And I thought that was really interesting. And it's sort of a gray area with Pershing, where it's like he does that speech in the opera house at the beginning where he explains he wasn't trying to clone people, but organs to save lives. And he comes across as sort of genuine in that. So, like, and remember, he wasn't an Imperial technically. He had the cloning uniform and, the clone symbol on his sleeve and all that shit in the first episode. So it was an interesting sort of gray area. It would have been an interesting thing, I don't know if you could have seeded this earlier, but it was like, I think there's more to that character, but I thought maybe she'd at least mysteries to have. If that makes sense, like on the show. You know what I mean?
They are.
Like that's the kind of shit I want. Like I think it's gutsy to sort of go back to those characters who were sort of, I don't want to say minor characters. Pershing was pretty important in the first season, but to sort of go back to that and address those things is really cool.
It is. FJ, if you can still hear me, I hope you can, because it looks like we may have lost Jim and Tyler. There was maybe a little outage here. I think we've got Tyler back. We lost Jim. So we're just going to keep on chatting and go through a couple of these super chats here. Since we have you on the line, here's one from Mint Greenbird. Says, Bo is acting like Death Watch is so foreign to her. She was in Death Watch when we met her. She slapped Ahsoka's, you-know-what, ASS, and imprisoned her. So wondering here why Bo is acting like Death Watch is foreign to her. She was in Death Watch.
I think she's playing it. Remember, they even say, what do you want, Night Owl?
Yes, that's right. They throw that back in her face.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting, it sets a sort of division between the different sort of clans of Mandalore. But I think Mint Green Bird, who has posted this, sort of like acting like Death Watch is so foreign. At this point, it's been a while, and maybe it's part of her eventual, play to get back into power, that not being part of Death Watch or something like that. I don't know. It's interesting. It's an interesting theory of why she's doing that. Because like even her gang, Sasha Banks and the other guy who
Mhm.
was following her. Where did they go? I guess they all
Wolves.
left her.
Yeah,
You know what I
Wolves
mean?
is
Like,
gone, and right after I got their action figures, it's the way it always goes. Here's Paul Kurtz. He says, imagine a reality TV show around 6 hot and diverse Amnesty program Imperial co-eds locked in a house. Loser each week gets mind flared.
Oh,
I love it.
And the
I like
loser
that.
every week would be poor Cyril.
Don't tell the folks at Disney Plus that. That very may well just be on next season.
Exactly. No, I think that's really funny. And I think, by the way, that, I don't know if you guys talked about this. I know I've joined late, but I thought the whole Amnesty program and all the stuff with the ex-Imperial was really fascinating. Like, I thought that was really cool and something we haven't seen before. And honestly, never really thought of it. Like, what happens to all these people? Like,
oh,
you know,
sure.
who were sort of drafted, you know, because you're sort of watching Bad Batch simultaneously as the clones are being phased out, right? It's almost like in parallel. It's like, what do you do with all these clone soldiers? And then now you jump ahead to this show, and it's like, what do you do with all these Imperial soldiers who were drafted against their will? You know, you got to put them in this program.
I say put him in jail. I say put him in jail and execute the worst ones. Let God sort them out. All right, here's Classic Donut says, Coruscant is a ecumenopolis. Ecumenopolis. Learning new Star Wars lingo is always fun. Am I right? Who knew? Probably everybody.
It's not Star
except
Wars
me.
lingo. Word's been
RFR
around
rules.
for 50, 60 years. Eucanopolis. It means
I knew him. He's the Greek guy that runs the gyro place down the street.
Yummy.
Mr.
I love the
Eucanopolis.
tzatziki sauce. I love the tzatziki sauce, the Eucanopolis. But it's essentially, you know, when you think of Coruscant, what is the definition? It is in the future, urban areas and cities, giant megapolises will eventually come together, and there'll be a single continuous worldwide city that will just cover the entire planet Earth. And that is a Eucanopolis. I can barely say the word.
All right, I'm glad.
But it is a word. It is a word steeped in reality, and it is not a Star Wars term. I just wanted you to know.
Well, we appreciate that. All right, here we go. Final super chat of the night. We got FJ. Glad he's here for this one. It says, New Republic disarmament makes them too vulnerable for First Order. That's where General Organa gets her fleet. What would your Mando armor look like? Love RFR. New Republic disarmament makes them too vulnerable for First Order. So yeah, so they're dismantling the Alliance fleet. They're dismantling the Imperial fleet. Oh, interesting.
I thought that
so
was wild. Like that we're learning about the New Republic because they're dismantling all the fleets and
right,
you know,
leaving them
so I have this
vulnerable. Right.
Force
That's what this
Awakens
person's
Leia
saying.
has like a bunch of like leftover shit. Right.
Yeah.
That's what Leia's got.
That's what
got,
she
like,
has.
All these leftovers that they found. Yeah, I find that wild that they would.
They're decommissioning
that
everything. It seems like they're being a little too hasty with this.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah. Who's in charge of Who's in charge of the New Republic at this point? Like, is that established?
I would assume
Mon Mothma.
Mon Mothma and Akbar.
Well, according to the old expanded universe, Mon Mothma, Leia.
Yeah, but you can't go by that.
You know, a lot of people have been mentioning the novel Bloodlines. Star Wars Bloodlines has information that clarifies a little bit of that hierarchy to a degree, I think. But I don't know what's in that book because I read it and forgot every word that was on the page.
It
was a very forgettable book.
It's a simple question that FJ asks, but yeah, we've spent enough time in this world that it would be nice to know who's in charge. Who's in charge here?
Supreme Chancellor
Well, that's
Kitster.
the fun part. Like, I was expecting when he was in the robot, you know, like counseling thing, where, you know, like that they'd be like, you know, do you have harsh feelings against?
Oh yeah,
no.
boy, was that like out of THX or something crazy.
This person, like, I thought they would say something like that, just to see, just to sort of give you an Easter egg of, who's in charge here. But they don't really clarify that. And I think it's really interesting because they do a cool state of the galaxy. Like, the New Republic is shaky to begin with. It's only a couple of years old, right?
Yeah.
So, and you have this sort of Coruscant, which really hasn't changed. It's the elitist. It almost bizarrely never changes.
No, and you look at the building here. I don't know if you can see this, FJ, but this is just a flag that's been thrown over one of the buildings of the New Republic. So there's not a sense of permanence. It's very much early days. We don't even have the New Republic logo emblazoned in any kind of brick or mortar. It's just a flag at this point. It does feel very temporary.
Yeah, it's like one of those Halloween shops pop up in the old Blockbuster store that's been vacant
it's a Spirit
for a
Halloween
decade.
store right here.
It's Spirit Halloween happening all over again on Coruscant. Pop-up stores.
I love it. FJ,
I think it's really interesting because the capital sort of changes from place to place, right? So by the time we get to Force Awakens, on Hosnian Prime.
Yeah.
I'm curious and it's also, by the way, the show, I think it's so jarring to like get out of the Outer Rim for a little bit in this series. Like, it's like, like, that's why I already got to say, I was texting you guys earlier or yesterday, like, it feels like an episode of Andor stuck in the middle of a, Mandalorian episode.
Yep. Somebody called it an episode of Mandalorian, of the Mandalorian.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Well done. But, I just think it's really, really cool. And I think a lot of it's jarring because we're learning new things about this era, which we don't really know a lot about.
Yeah. I said, I'm enjoying the ride. Just, a destination here or there would be great for me. But this was awesome, FJ. I know that everyone in the chat is excited that you showed up. I'm sure excited that you showed up and decided to join us. You're always welcome. That number I sent you, by the way, I sent you a very special number.
I'm saving it.
That always works. So you can always butt yourself right in.
The back phone.
Yeah. Just use it responsibly. Don't give it to Kyle or Paul or, one of those guys.
Oh,
it's just between us.
Exactly.
Hey, thanks, buddy.
Guys, thanks for having me. Hello, everybody. Talk
All right.
later. Bye.
All right. See you. Thanks so much. FJ DeSanto, how fun was that? Showing up here.
What a surprise.
Huge surprise.
That was awesome.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for the incredible fun that we've had here on the show tonight. It really has been awesome. Great calls. The super chat's generous as always. FJ is our special guest. Unannounced, but always welcome, that's for sure. Sorry we didn't get to all the calls this week. It was a busy switchboard. Partially because of one guy, Tyler Page. Tyler, thanks so much, buddy, for all of your help tonight. You do such a great job. A lot of calls. I know we didn't get to several of them. Anything stick out for you that you didn't hear us discuss this week?
You guys covered quite a bit. I mean, we've been around here for a while tonight. But one thing that I was thinking was backstage. Jimmy, you mentioned that Grogu and Anakin were born at the same time. All I can think back to was the Legends explanation where Plagueis, I think this is in a comic, Plagueis created Anakin. So what if he created a little secret backdoor and that was Grogu? I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that could be pretty cool. Either way, I think Grogu's going to end up being used to create some sort of Sith power or something like that, right? That seems pretty obvious. Cool things that I liked from this episode: Mando free falling onto Zen 1, and blanking on the other one, but the
the free falling was great.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
So awesome. Was that Mon Cal sanitary enough to be a scientist, to be doing that kind of stuff? I feel like.
What are you saying? He's a dirty fish?
No, he's got that fishy slime. I don't want a fish doing any surgery on me. I think Tyler's absolutely right.
Maybe there's healing properties in there. You never know. I had hemorrhoids once. I got a tube of calamari slime. I used it daily and
cleared them right up, didn't it?
Melted them right away. Yeah.
Oh man. All right, Ty. Thanks so much, buddy.
This show is actually sponsored by Mon Calamari Slime. I can't even say it. Mon Calamari Slime.
Why hasn't Hasbro grabbed onto that? Why can't we get a can of old-fashioned Mon Cal slime?
Maybe even a
Get
two.
to work on that, Tyler.
Right.
All right. I'll get to work.
Thanks, Tyler. All right, Jimmy Mac, you get to work on your final thoughts.
Ooh, final thoughts for this wild and crazy episode of The Mandalorian, The Convert. I really enjoyed this. I don't understand the apathy toward this or anything about it. I'm in this series for the long haul, and fortunately, Jason, some of your critiques about it not moving fast enough kind of lets me think that your critique is the result of years of binge watching shows, and now it's come to affect your patience in such a way that you need it all at once. You need to mainline the content. Give me it all at once. I can take it. Well, we gotta let these series drag out a little bit, you know? I mean, we have to start developing a little bit of patience, and hopefully the show will go somewhere. I know as far as a TV viewer, I've been burned before. I've been patient with shows just to have them go nowhere. But I have faith in Jon Favreau, and I have faith in The Mandalorian. I think this show has a lot of potential to keep telling incredible stories deep into the future. And sometimes we might be seeing things that are setups for things that won't get paid off for a year or two, or maybe even longer. But I think that we should ride the wave and enjoy it and soak in everything they're throwing at us at once. And this episode threw a lot at us at once. I loved all the expanded universe drops that were happening throughout this whole thing. Some of it was hard to figure out unless you had the closed caption on. And the Uber driver that was driving Pershing around Malastare and giving him a little tour and some concierge tips. That Uber driver droid was clearly inspired by Ralph McQuarrie concept art for C-3PO. The very same concept art that Anthony Daniels saw when he went to visit George Lucas for the first time to talk about the role of 3PO in Star Wars. He saw a droid with that face. Not the face of 3PO, we know, but with the face of that Uber driver droid, and that was the face that Anthony Daniels fell in love with and connected with. Well, that's Ralph McQuarrie art, along with the other Coruscant McQuarrie art we saw throughout this episode. We also got Coruscant locales getting mentioned by the Uber driver. He mentioned specifically the Sky Dome Botanical Gardens, where the mysis blossoms make you just say, my oh my, they're so beautiful. Well, that comes from this book, Jedi Search, by Kevin J. Anderson from 1994, as does the, here's actually where it gets mentioned on page 25, right there. It says, in Leia's quarters on Coruscant, around her, fresh-cut flowers from the Sky Dome Botanical Gardens brighten the room with their faint perfume. Well, Sky Dome gets a shout out by the Uber driver droid, as does the Galactic Museum, where there's a hyperdrive exhibit currently on display that will wow you. That was mentioned in this book by Kevin J. Anderson, the Illustrated Star Wars Universe, as was the Holographic Museum of Extinct Animals, where you could see the Manta Bog of Malastare. Again, from this book, this is where that stuff originated, and in the Jedi Academy trilogy from Kevin J. Anderson from the mid-90s. So these little shout-outs been around for a long time. Expanded universe getting legitimized in live-action Star Wars in the year 2023. I think that's a really good sign. Long live the New Republic. We heard that being said a few times in this episode. It almost seems like the way they were saying it was, there was something like culty, like religious cult about the way that they were acting. And that's why I still wasn't really sure if Elia, whatever her name is, I wasn't really sure if she was completely legit or not. I was thinking to myself during the episode, maybe she does love the New Republic now. Maybe she's acting to benefit the New Republic in everything she does. But nah, she's loyal to Moff Gideon still. She's still an Imperial, and she's going to make that very clear to us as this season continues to unfold. Like Jason, the use of the Mind Flayer, I question the ethical nature of a New Republic that is supposed to be the opposite of an empire. Why are they employing these devices? But I really think it's because they're so burned by the decades of Imperial rule that extreme measures are being taken to ensure that any Imperial idealism or law breaking is completely eliminated from society. And if that means they have to use low voltage versions of the tools their oppressors used, then so be it. Pershing's a parolee, and his Imperial past is going to follow him. And I think he must have served some time in prison maybe before he was rehabbed and was able to enter this Amnesty program. So it makes you wonder how much time has passed between the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian and the beginning of season 3. Jon Favreau has thrown out so many conflicting statements about the timeline. It's really hard to wrap my head around. But there'll be a book or something that explains all of that sooner or later. All in all, I really enjoyed the close look at Coruscant, our first visit to live action Coruscant since the very end of the Return of the Jedi Special Edition, when they were showing all those celebrations going on throughout the galaxy. But it was really nice to get back there and I mean on the timeline. I know we were just there with Andor. I didn't forget that already, but I just mean on the timeline. This is the first time we're seeing it post Return of the Jedi. And like Andor, I did appreciate the consistency with that show, where we weren't just seeing all the glamorous, gleaming high rises on the skyline, but we were getting down and dirty in there and seeing other parts of Coruscant like we saw with Andor, where more normal people live, or just the regular folk. And it has that heavily extremist, concrete structures. I appreciated the callbacks to Andor, and I noticed it myself. And when the episode ended and I decided to look at some social media, I was wondering, I wonder if anybody else picked up on the Andor vibes. The very first tweet I saw, wow, this might have been an episode of Andor. The very first thing I saw on Facebook, Mandalorian. The first email I saw, boy, I tuned into Mandor and I got an episode of Andor. Andor, God, it gets confusing. You know what? At the end of the day, don't stress out about it. Don't wring your hands over it. It's all just Star Wars. It's all one part of big, sprawling mythology. And I feel we get too nitpicky about, well, this show felt like Andor. It's all Star Wars. Get over yourself. Newt Gunray, where are you, Newt? Not in this episode.
You feel better?
That was just a rambling.
Get it all out.
Final thoughts. I really got immersed in this episode.
It sounds like
it really appealed to me as somebody who understood all the references and had to dig deep for some semi-hidden Easter eggs throughout this episode. That was fun for me, and I like that interaction. Jason, I know you weren't a big fan of the old expanded universe novels or anything like that, but that's kind of like the way I used to treat those novels, is I would read a little bit, and then they would make a reference to something. I'd find myself trying to research what that term is. I look through Steve Sansweet books. Later in life, I'd do online searches. Yeah, I like that interaction. That's a lot of fun for me.
Sean on the chat wanted me to let you know that he missed everything after Jimmy Mac's final thoughts. So could you repeat that?
All right. What's his name? Sean? Sean, send me your phone number. I'm going to call you up right after the show. And I got so many final thoughts, it's going to last until Saturday. So Or
All
I'm
right.
sorry, Tongs Day.
Tongs
We'll talk
Day.
till Tongs Day. Tongs Day, not in this episode.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us here. Thank you so much for hanging with us. It's been a blast. It really has been. Special thanks to FJ DeSanto once again for surprising us. Make sure you check us out over on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/RebelForceRadio or RebelForceRadio.com. Click on the Patreon banner. You'll get to see all of the various perks and benefits at the different levels if you support the show that way. Also, please like and subscribe to the Rebel Force Radio YouTube channel. We love to have those subscriptions. They really help out. Please comment on this video. Don't just leave the final. It's Jimmy Mac's final thoughts, not the final word. So you be the final word, and you comment on this post and tell us what you think, what we got right, what we got wrong. But above all, just keep listening to Rebel Force Radio and telling all your friends. We appreciate that. Word of mouth is really great. We'll be back next week, next Wednesday, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, Lord willing, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time for more Mandalorian after show. And then we'll be back the following night, Thursday, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time for The Bad Batch. And we'll be looking at 2 episodes of The Bad Batch, the episode that aired this week and next week's episode as well. So a double feature of Bad Batch. Until then, for Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mac.
And they were wondering where Puffer Pig was.
He's here.
He's here.
He wanted to say hi.
All right. Remember,
the Force will be with you, always.
Whoop. Oh, Christ. I have COVID, guys. I have COVID. What do you want from me? It's a miracle I made it through this 3-hour after show. Later.